Just identify yourself and tell us your address. And you have to push that button to turn the mic on.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Reed. My in-town address is 416 Quarry Road, and I'm here from Habitat for Humanity to give a really quick update about how everything is going. So, as you know, the inside was gutted, so now it's framed out for 3 units of housing, 2 one-bedroom and 1 two-bedroom house. So we've got the framing done, the blocking done, the subfloors are in. Hopefully this week we'll do some of the window replacement for some of the windows that were broken. We'd love to have people come volunteer with us. We have volunteers there Wednesday through Saturday. In September, Neshoba Valley Tech will be back to help us with carpentry, plumbing, and electric. So this summer, we're hoping to get everything else done. So we'll get the sprinkler system in, some of the HVAC roughed in. And the application for homeownership is open right now. So it opened on June 4th. It'll be open till August 4th. So anyone in town or in the surrounding communities who would be interested in applying, we have applications available at the library right next door. We have some at the house at 416 Quarry Road as well, and at our other office at 3 Park Street in Leominster. People can call us or go to the website, ncmhabitat.org, and download an application from there as well. So the applications are due, that's a hard deadline, on August 4th, and then we'll be selecting the homeowners by public lottery, probably in early September, and we hope to finish next spring and have the homeowners move in by then. So the homes will be highly energy efficient, and again, it's for families earning between 30% and 60% of area median income.
Thank you so much for coming in, Carolyn, and I hope that this will get you some more volunteer builders, this announcement, and
We would
also
love
some more
that.
applications. I just have one quick question for you. Is the office occupied right now, or do
So
you have
we're-
an expected date for that?
We're building an office in the front because it was limited business, which is fabulous. We wanted to come back to Acton. So we will be having one in the front. Right now, we have kind of a field office in the barn. And our hope is sometime in the future, the barn will become another 3 or 4 bedroom house. So we're working on a plan for septic for that to happen in the future. That'll be a different permitting process. But right now, we have some staff there just as a field office, and then we'll be moving into the front. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Is there anybody online for resident concerns?
None with their hands raised.
Okay. All right, so just moving on to our next item, which is the chair update and town manager update and members' minutes. I have a couple of announcements, or updates rather, and they're a little lengthy, so please bear with me. I wanted to call on the board members especially, but pretty much anyone in the public, for some advocacy for the passage of the Municipal Empowerment Act before the end of July, so before July 31st. The Municipal, Massachusetts Municipal Agent, MMA, Massachusetts Municipal Association recently sent out an action alert asking officials to advocate with their senator and representatives. So just to give you a little summary, it's right now at the House Committee on Ways and Means. They hold the bulk of the bill's provisions. And those provisions would make current remote and hybrid public meeting flexibilities permanent, which I know would be a big boon for Acton's boards and committees. It would also reform procurement procedures and regulations, including the threshold for all municipal purchases to match the threshold for schools, streamline cooperative purchasing agreements, and include snow hauling services with snow plowing services as exempt from rules of the Uniform Procurement Act. It would also extend the borrowing term cap for municipal building projects to 40 years, so that would better reflect the life expectancy of municipal infrastructure while lowering annual debt impacts. It also takes aim at the challenge faced by municipalities all over the state to compete with the private sector for workers by introducing some temporary flexibilities for post-retirement municipal employment to fill critical shortages, and also allow for the creation of regional boards of assessors to pool resources and reduce staffing strain. So if you can reach out to our local delegation, board members, and any other person who is interested in making municipal government more efficient and cost-effective. I have some also really exciting news on the Health Insurance Trust, which is no more. When we moved from being self-insured along with the school district to Maya, which is Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Agency, Association, something like that. I'm not good with acronyms tonight. The trust entered into a run-out period to process any claims that were submitted for services prior to the ending of the Health Insurance Trust, June 30th, 2024. The Harvard Pilgrim run-out ended last year on June 30th, and the Blue Cross Blue Shield run-out period ended this June 30th, just a week ago. So basically, our responsibility for any services provided prior to June 30th, 2024 ended on June 30th, 2026. The Health Insurance Trust held our final meeting on June 24th, and we ended the business of the trust and delegated remaining final administrative tasks to staff. And just to give you a financial update, we are keeping a checking account open with a small balance of $2,000 because Blue Cross Blue Shield will continue to make adjustments indefinitely, unfortunately. But these are tiny adjustments. So in May, for example, we had a $4 adjustment. But that's just going to continue forever. The town and school will receive reimbursement from funds that were held by Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is about $500,000 at the end of July. And the town's share of that is 22.55%, and the school district share is 77.45%. So what remains for the run-out claims is coming back to both the town and the district. And I just wanted to take the opportunity also to share a reminder that the Health Insurance Trust was a very good option for the district and town employees and retirees for its 20-year existence. So even though we had a relatively small pool, which a lot of people see as risky, we engaged an independent consultant and treasurer. We purchased stop-loss insurance to protect the trust from claims that reached $175,000 in a year. The trustees adjusted the rates to ensure that revenue matched the claims over those 2 decades and actually saved the town and the district money. Reserves were actually too high at one point, and we had to deliberately reduce the rates. The dissolution of the trust and the switch to Maya was the result of a 6-month period post-COVID when claims from 11 individuals totaled $3.2 million, and that was beyond the ability of the trust to pay, and forced a mid-year, almost 23% rate hike. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to applaud the work of the district and the town management for evaluating options for group coverage. We looked at the Group Insurance Commission, GIC. We looked at Maya, Mass Strategic Health Group, Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, and West Suburban Health Group. And the town and the district successfully negotiated contracts with 8 unions, managed the enrollment into the new plans, and also moved the retirees first to Aetna and then to Maya. So this was a huge effort, and I just want to applaud all of the staff and that were involved in that, and also the union members. And finally, I want to note that we had a great Independence Day celebration last week and recognize all the staff, volunteers, and community partners for their work, securing vendors and sponsors, preparing the site, and working the event. The lineup was extremely thoughtful, and I thought it was a good mix of activities for everybody. We had free beach access, bouncy houses and water slides, food trucks and vendors. a soloist who sang the national anthem. We had the Acton Minutemen playing fife and drum and also doing a musket volley, a reading of the Declaration, and the Boss Project Band and a laser show. So there was really something for everyone, and I know it took a lot of work and time on the part of town staff, volunteers, and all of our community partners, so thank you. And that's it from me. Do you have an update for us, Tom?
Madam Chair, I do, but before I provide one, I'm wondering if you would be willing to ask for public comment again. I've been made aware that unfortunately Zoom was muted, and there's a few people in the waiting, or in the attendance who may like to speak.
All right, so for those of you who are online, we've already done resident concerns, but if there's anybody who is online, if you wanted to participate in residents' concerns and discuss something that's not on the agenda, please raise your hand.
It does not look like anybody.
All right, thank you for noticing that.
Thank you. I do have three quick things. First, as you're all aware, our interim police chief has been named as the police chief. Doug Sterniolo was recently named as police chief. He has been with the town for over 20 years, and we're pretty excited that he has now become the full-time police chief. There will be a swearing-in ceremony that will be sent around to you as well shortly if you've not received it already. Additionally, we have named a director of the Council on Aging, who is Erin Woodbury, and she actually started today. She took a tour of Town Hall with Penny Funioli, the Director of Health and Human Services. So Erin has hit the ground running, and if you have an opportunity to stop by 30 Sudbury Road to say hello and introduce yourself, I know that she'd be very excited to meet you all. And then the third update and announcement I have is on Tuesday, July 14th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the AML parking lot right outside here. The Sustainability Department will be hosting an EV, energy efficiency, and clean energy fair. So if you're interested, I do encourage anyone interested to attend. It's typically a very good time. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And member minutes from anybody? Pam?
So I want to, just acknowledge the important role that volunteers place in our town governance, and there are a number of committees that are looking for volunteers, so I encourage people to go onto the website to look for that. I'd like to call out just a couple of them. I know the Transportation Advisory Committee is looking for new volunteers, both associate and full members. The Commission on Disabilities is also looking for volunteers and associate members, and we are still looking for a Acton representative to the Minuteman School Committee. And for that position, if you're interested, please contact the town moderator.
All right, thank you very much. It is not 6:30, but that's okay because we have one item ahead of our public hearing, which is item number 3, discussion on committee and board member emails. And I see we have our IT director here. Did you want to introduce this or have Carl?
I would like to, if you don't mind,
All right,
please.
sounds good.
So joining me at the table here is Director of Innovation and Technology, Carl Volker. Carl is here to talk about an email and some information he's provided in the past about handling some options on handling committee and board emails moving forward. Once Carl's provided some information, we'd like to receive some feedback, but ultimately some direction on how the board would like us to move and potentially some policy creation that'll be discussed as well. So at this time, I'd be happy to pass it over to Carl.
Hello, I'm Carl. Thank you, members of the board. I'll keep it brief. I think I sent a note out to John Mangiarotti last week, that we're having trouble with committee emails and with the change to Office 365 and how in practice a lot of the members have forwarded their email to external accounts. It just doesn't work any longer. It's inconsistent, it's unreliable. I have spent a considerable amount of time looking for workarounds. I want to be clear, it's not broken, it doesn't need a fix, it would be a workaround, and I can't find one that is reliable. And basically what's happening is the way, when an email comes in to, say, the Transportation Advisory Committee, the Dog Park Committee, it forwards out, and if it has a town email address in that distribution list, it delivers fine. If it goes to, say, Verizon.net or Comcast or any of those, it's unreliable, and sometimes the ISP will bounce it. It looks like we're a relay, and we're just relaying the messages there. Then there's nothing I can do on the Office 365 to change that. You know, our prior email system was on-prem, so we were doing all of our mail delivery from on-prem with an old system, and now Microsoft delivers it all for us. So it's become more of a problem. When we moved over, it wasn't quite, it wasn't quite noticeable. I don't know. Some of the groups may or may not check their email as frequently, and it may not have been noticed, but it's bouncing more and more. And so I put two options in front of the town manager's office that I think we could go with, and one would be all town committee members have an Acton email. They're assigned one now as it is. But forwarding not be allowed any longer, and they would check the email through the web portal or through their desktop access, and any communication would be done by there. I think that's the most logical way to do it. I think it would be the cleanest. It would be even across the board. It does give them another email account that they have to check, but it's a modern web interface. It's compatible with every phone. You can put it on there pretty easily. The other suggestion that was floated after talking with the manager's office was whether a chair and a vice chair have town email accounts and they manage it, and if a message comes in from a resident or the public, they would send it out to external email addresses and be more of a manual option. I think it would work. I think it could lead to inconsistent delivery. It would put more burden on the chair and the vice chair. But that's what we're looking to do, to make a decision. We are coming up to our agreement with Microsoft that we have to renew. And we have approximately 168 licenses that we pay for town committee members right now. So it's a fair amount. So it'd be helpful, one, for cost-wise, if we have to continue purchasing them, that's great. We'll just see better use of them. And if not, we could reduce them and potentially make some cost savings there. So the other thing we would do is if we did go with the town committee members, we'd like to introduce two-factor authentication. We rolled that out entirely for the staff earlier this year. It wasn't fully implemented, and it should be, and it really should be for the committee members too. It's a town resource. It's a very common best practice that, and I understand, the committee members are volunteers, that they're giving the town the time, and I totally respect that. So I want to be cautious as an IT person, not to be heavy-handed, but I think we've got to make a decision here and look into the board and town management for guidance on that so that IT can have a clear position on it. And just one final note, because it might have been confusion. The email addresses would stay the same. So if it's, WRAC, the dog park, whatever, I don't know them, they would still go. And whether it went to all committee members, as it does now with town email addresses, or the chair and vice chair, would stay the same. So it wouldn't be, distribution list would go to one person, or the email address would change. It would really be nothing visible from the public or the resident side. And finally, too, it would help with public records requests. Everything would be within town, every communication there, so if things are going outside to a public email address, a personal email address, that could come under scope if we were requested for it, and that would, IT doesn't have access to it, the town doesn't, so that'd be up to the individual to do that, so. Hopefully it's clear. I know it's a change. Change is always tough, so respect your thoughts and any questions you might have.
I will say, truer words were never spoken. Change is always tough. Thank you. I appreciate all of that information. It was very, very clear. What I heard was mostly about functionality, and I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit on security and any considerations that the board should be taking, one option versus the other in terms of security? Because I've been reading and hearing that that's a much bigger concern now than it was, even 5 years ago.
Absolutely, it's a great question. I think one of the biggest lifts would be putting the two-factor on there. We've had a few committee email addresses get hacked in a pretty substantial way, and it's hard to protect against that. I mean, if a hacker gets into that account, it can send email with false links, and our filters won't pick that off because it looks legit, and the headers will all look like it's coming from that email address. So we've had a few of those, and it's not just committee members. Staff will run into that too, but the two-factor is a huge, it's due diligence. Anything can get hacked at any time if somebody really wants it. But I think if we say, we did our due diligence and we're using, best practice that we have available to us, I think that goes a long way. Our Microsoft cloud environment is in a government cloud, so there's additional level of security on there, how it's protected, how the data can be accessed by different, entities and whatnot, whether it's in Microsoft itself. So I think there's we jump through hoops on that to get that there. It has made it a little difficult if somebody has like an Outlook account already and they have an app on their phone. We can't blend personal with GCC. It's a government cloud. It's a restriction that Microsoft puts in place to keep those accounts separate. And we have workarounds for that. If you can use a native email account, the way the web interface works now, it actually, you can put an icon on your desk, on your app, on your phone, and it'll look a lot like the web interface, the web interface and the app interface. So those are the main security features of that.
So that would apply to both of the options then? We can do the two-factor authentication, or is one of the options going to enable you to have a higher level of security?
The first option, where if we put
okay.
all if committee members use their town email, we would have a broader two-factor authentication and security, whereas in the other sense, it would just be for the chair, and if there's a vice chair or two members of that would be secured, so.
Okay.
And it is a change, I acknowledge that, and what I would say to that is, if this gets approved and we decide to go that route, IT will do it carefully and thoughtfully and really assist the committee members to make sure they have a good transition to it. So it's not painful and we don't say somebody this is not worth it, I don't want to do it anymore, I want to avoid that.
Okay. Thoughts, questions from board members? David?
So I just have one clarification for everyone, because it was a clarification for me, is that this is the forwarding that Carl refers to is from the email shells to the individuals, not another kind of relay. And so that's the biggest question here. And to me, the only acceptable course here is the first one, option one. Option two requires that individuals in each committee maintain an email list. And if anybody needs to send anything out to everyone, like, the chair is sick, we're canceling the meeting for tonight, they need to know everybody who's on the committee, right? And what is typically, I maintain one of these myself, and so what people often do is they keep the email list in a file or in an entry in their local address book. And then if other people want to use it, they search their emails back and they reply all to an old email, which will pick up all the old email addresses. But that's an inherently archaic list, right? If the membership has changed, then that's not a current list. And so it's, to me, alternatives two is not the way we want to run things. That's just my input here. I did want to ask Carl, is it an option to forward the town's email account to your own? So if I'm John Doe at actonmod.gov, and I have my John Doe at gmail.com, and I use that, and I prefer not to have to manage two accounts. Can I forward just my account, my John Doe at actonmod.gov to John Doe at gmail.com?
You can, it's a great question, but the problem will be is that if one-to-one email forwarding works, and so if it's John Doe at Acton to John Doe at Gmail and I sent it, it will forward it because the mechanism that's doing it that way allows it, and the ISPs aren't picking that off. When your John Doe at Acton MA shows up in a distribution list, it will bounce it. It's that's where it's happening. It doesn't matter if it's a user rule in the mailbox. It doesn't matter if I do it at an admin level at the Office 365 portal. It's that forwarding mechanism. What I would suggest too is if we approve this, if the board approves it to go with town email, we would shut off forwarding. It's a security, I mean, if you get audited or something, every time somebody forwards their email, IT gets an alert, just so we know. Because it's looked as not a security breach, but a security lapse, or it's something that's not consistent with it. You're not a relay server anymore. We're not looking to be a relay server. We're looking to ingest email, deliver it, send out email. So my recommendation would be is that we shut it off. And I would say, if there is a unique case where it could always be open for discussion. I mean, I think, there's always, you should never say no. But I think it should be a clear policy that we shut off forwarding.
Great. And so I understand that it could work, but it's not a best practice to turn that on. And
Two things, it's not a best practice and it's not consistent.
okay.
One-to-one will work, distribution list will work.
So just a recommendation on the other side to me, and this is more important if we don't allow individual forwarding, and that's maybe and I'm sure this is part of the work that you're talking about, that you said we'll do it carefully and everything, is that we have good documentation for folks on how to have multiple email clients on their phones or computers, and in some cases on both. You can mix them with other things, and I can mix them on my computer. I can't mix them on my phone. So all that documentation, so it's easy for people to because we're going to have 163. Well, some people already use their town accounts. We're going to have about 100 people or something try to set this up for themselves. And just finally, for me, the two-factor authentication thing is good. Yeah, I think that's a good practice.
Yeah, it's a change in it, but I think, when we did it for the staff, I think there was a lot of concern, what if I leave my phone at home? And it's not, it ended up going much smoother, and I really got a strong team. We're big on customer support, so I think we'll look at that. Because I can run a report easily and find out how many people are forwarded, and we would target those first. And then I think what we would do is we'd put the forwarding ban in place so it doesn't happen, so we don't have any more. I run a report, so who's forwarded. We make sure we get in touch with those folks first. We write the instructions. We already have some that we did for staff. I can expand on those, throw them up on a very easily accessible site where they can see, give our phone. I think we can provide really good customer service to make it a smooth transition. And just going back to your distribution lists and how people manage those, I think one of the benefits of doing this all in with the town is that Acton IT can manage those distribution lists. So we keep in touch with the clerks tell us people leave, we take care of that on the back end, and so members, it's not take away the keys necessarily, but we pull them off when they're not supposed to get communications, and we can do that, and that way you're not running into working off an old list or something. So I think it makes the most sense from an organizational standpoint, and but I agree. I think, we can provide what the committee members will need to make sure it's smooth, and we're available, and we'll make ourselves available.
Pam and then Dean.
I agree that the first option is the option that makes sense. I know I have heard from a number of volunteers who have said that they like to use their personal email in the shell because they felt that the town email didn't work for them. So I just say that as I really appreciate everything that you've been saying about supporting the volunteers, but I think for this to work, there's going to have to be significant support and training, for all the volunteers.
Totally agree, and I think, once we get it in place and we set this as a new policy, as new members are onboarded, it should be easier, and we'll smooth them out. I think the interfaces we can offer now with our newer system, it gives a much more modern look. I think they're easier, more intuitive to use than some of the old web interface, so I get it. I think there'll be a big lift in the beginning, and, and we'll just have to do it carefully, and, and then I think it'll get smoother from there. I mean, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I checked with the committees that I liaise with and the strong preferences for the first option. I know one in particular, conservation. Sometimes, especially in the run-up before a meeting, they might be bouncing back 15 or 20 emails over a period of a day, day and a half, and stick that on the chair to sort that all out using the second option, it just wouldn't work. So I think the strong preference would be for the first option.
All right. So the only thing I have to add is I also checked in with some of my liaison volunteers, and even though it might be more convenient to check a single email account, I think that everybody's on board with the inefficiency of the second option being not acceptable, and being, more work for someone and getting lost if somebody's ill or away on vacation. I have done some transitions to new ways of doing things that were accompanied by a video tutorial. So I just want to share with everybody who's listening that yes, the IT department here has excellent customer service. I have been in many, many, many times, and it's so quick and so easy to get assistance and resolve whatever issue I'm having. But just in a different form, when we switched over to Outlook, there was a text instructions, and if there were more than one mode for different kinds of learners, maybe some folks might. Don't want to give you more work, but that's just one suggestion that I have. And it seems like the board is all in agreement that option one is the preferred option.
Madam Chair, and thank you all for that feedback, we would ask if the board's willing to approve this transition to utilizing town-issued emails only, and then approving a policy that requires board and committee members to only utilize that email and no longer utilize personal emails for town business.
Yes, would you like a formal vote?
That would be fantastic.
Okay,
please.
so I move that the Select Board authorize the town staff to begin a transition to require board and committee volunteers to use only official email and no longer forward.
No longer use personal emails.
No longer use personal emails.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a second? Second from Fran. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, our next item of business is a public hearing. Thank you for your patience. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on July 6, 2026 at 6:30 p.m., continued from June 15th, 2026, in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually at actonma.gov/meeting/SB on a site plan special permit under zoning bylaw section 10.4 at 13 School Street. The applicant, Alexandre Mota, proposes to construct a mixed-use development consisting of ground floor commercial space with 7 residential units located on the upper levels. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online and at Acton Town Hall at doc.actonma.gov/dsweb/view/collection-20116. And go ahead, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening. Paul Kirshner from Stamsky McNary. We're the engineers and surveyors for this project. So it's been a while since we last appeared before the board, but in that time we received the third-party peer review from Beals and Thomas and responded to the comments that they made. Also made some changes in response to more of a discussion that we had with the board at the last public hearing in which we appeared. Most substantial change is that we have increased the number of parking spaces being provided on the site so that we now have 11 spaces proposed to the rear of the building. Kayla and planning staff were very helpful in coming up with this plan in order to maximize what we can provide on the site in order to satisfy realistic demand for parking on the property. I can't go into more specifics about the other changes that we made, but those are primarily administrative paperwork, a little impact on the plans, but we did also submit an updated landscape plan, so the board has that as well. We received Conservation Commission approval last Wednesday, so that component of the project is complete. But if you have any questions, please ask away. Thank you.
Thank you. Fran, this is your project, right?
I did, and I have some points to make, but, okay. You also received Historic District Commission June 17th. I didn't know if we knew that or not, but, and the parking fix is awesome. Should I run down the whole project, or? Just a little synopsis. I have a synopsis of the decision. It's a proposed 16,049 square foot mixed-use building featuring 5 ground floor commercial units and 7 residential units spanning the upper levels and a portion of the ground floor. The site, located at 13 School Street, the South Acton Village -1 District in Groundwater Zone 4. It is currently a municipally owned parking lot being sold to applicant Alexandre Mota via an RFP process. The critical deadlines are the select board agrees to, we extended the property closing date to August 7th. The final permit decision is due by October 4th or 90 days post-hearing. We did the outside board approvals. The commercial parking fix was huge. The original plan slashed commercial parking down to 6 spaces due to a tight 4-foot maneuvering deficiency in the rear. In response to heavy planning division, thank you, planning division, concerns about a long-term business success, the applicant submitted a revised plan, increasing parking to 11 dedicated commercial spaces, plus 11 residential spaces, so it's 22 in total. The staff now finds this layout maximizes the tight site's potential. There will be bicycle and pedestrian assets, meets the zoning bylaw with 3 bicycle spaces, now property protected by labeled bollards. An existing concrete sidewalk along the 145.82 foot frontage will be maintained. In response to the board feedback, the applicant has agreed to grant the town an easement along the street frontage to help preserve on-street parking and facilitate future town complete streets, infrastructure improvements. In the floor area ratio, the proposed FAR is 0.59, while the district baseline is 0.4. It can be expanded up to 1.0 because the applicant is committing the ground floor frontage entirely to specific allowed commercial uses, retail, restaurant, services, et cetera. What else? Beals and Thomas, you've said this already. Let's see, and I think that that's really it. The notable draft conditions of approval, if the board votes to grant the site plan permit tonight, key conditions binding the applicant, and jump in, Kayla, if I'm getting something wrong. Tenant restrictions, future commercial tenants must strictly fit into the pre-approved SAV1 village categories, no unapproved uses. Infrastructure fees, must pay all outstanding sewer assessments and sewer privilege fees prior to receiving a building permit. Operations and nuisance control, delivery and dumpster pickup hours are strictly restricted to 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Outdoor lighting must be turned off by 11 p.m. or 30 minutes after business close. And lastly, strict adherence to erosion controls and construction debris management. That's all I have.
Thank you for that. Kayla, do you have anything that you want to bring to the board's attention? Additional?
I think that was a great summary, so thank you. Thank you for the compliments, but I also just want to thank the applicant for being willing to work with us on the parking when they actually met the zoning at the time with the original plan. So it was nice to come to a happy conclusion on the parking. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been learning a lot about parking and parking minimums and lots of communities eliminating them because builders know what the market needs in terms of parking. So a lot of times municipalities over-require on parking. I do have a question about the expected parking for employees, because Fran, I think I heard you say 5 commercial. Is it 4 or 5 commercial?
5.
5 commercial, okay. So I guess I'm just wondering about potential customers versus employees, and if employees are going to be able to find other areas in the village to park. And also I have a question about the 3 School Street, because the PNS for 3 and 13, I believe, is a single PNS. No, it's not. Okay, so I don't have a question about that then.
Okay. Yeah, they're separate PNSs, so. I'd like to freeze about parking matter that we have 11 exterior parking spots, but we do have 10 interior parking spots that will be underneath the building. So that will service the residential units. So all the residents will have covered parking. So that exterior parking lot would be used by the commercial units. So I think that along with the street parking that we should be able to conserve with the easement or having the flexibility, or that option of having the street parking still, I think that would be plenty for the commercial units. But yeah, I'd say that we have those 11 exterior parking spots plus street parking, which I think it should be plenty.
Any other comments or questions from board members?
Were you expecting a vote tonight, or I think, were you expecting?
I don't think there's anything left outstanding. I will ask for public comment on this. If there is any in the room or online. Wow, this is going to be easy tonight because you fixed everything. I'm really excited about this project because I live like a block down the road. So I'm really happy to see that hole filled in and to see mixed-use development. It's beautiful. Thank you very much for the architectural renderings. That's really super helpful, especially different street views where you see the proposed project in the contextual, the rest of the built environment. I wish everybody did that. All right, well, I guess I will accept a motion if there's no public comment and no more comments from board members. Let Fran make it. Oh. Okay, go ahead,
No,
David.
I was just going to move to close the public hearing.
Oh, yes, thank
So
you.
Fran can make the big motion.
Okay.
So I'm moving to close the public hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we have closed the public hearing. All you have to do is move to approve and
Yes,
then read it.
the site plan special permit application 0309264997 for 13 School Street, as drafted in the packet. Thank you, David.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve this application. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.
All right, our next item is a presentation on the Stow Street Complete Streets Study.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am happy to introduce two people who are joining us at the front. First, from Howard Stein Hudson, Hera Lampos Strathopoulos, and the town engineer and assistant director for DPW, Evan, Evan is at the front, and he will be able to introduce everybody and give the presentation.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, Acton Select Board. Tonight, we're going to go over the Stow Street preliminary design for complete streets. It's a section of Stow Street from around Martin Street intersection to the Stow Street, to the Stow Town line, rather. And it's going to include pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, some traffic calming things. And we have Bob Stathopoulos with Howard Stein Hudson to walk us through the final report.
Thank you, Evan, and thank you, members of the Select Board, for the opportunity to present this study to you tonight. Evan pretty much summarized what we've done for this, but I will quickly give the intro for the study team, or what was the purpose of the study, the status, which technically is basically we're trying to close it out with this presentation tonight. Quickly discuss the alternatives we looked into, and open up the floor to any questions. Next slide, please. From my side, the Howard Stein Hudson team, it was myself as a project manager, and we had a few engineers involving the roadway design, the traffic analysis, and any traffic elements to be considered. Environmental engineer that was looking into any of the permitting that would be required because we are in a very heavily wooded area in one part with a lot of wetlands throughout the area. And a structural engineer due mainly to the 3 culverts you have along Stow Street, but in case also that shared use path we were looking into required any retaining walls for anything. So purpose was already alluded to. We're looking into those pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. As you may know, Stow Street in the stretch that was included in the study has no such accommodations, and also look into any safety improvements along the corridor. The status, as I mentioned, we're trying to close out this study tonight with this presentation, but as you can see in that little calendar, it was an 8-month process going through the data collection, doing the analysis and pulling together the report to come, and the 2 public meetings that we did to come here tonight. Next slide, please. Just quickly showing some of the information that we collected on our traffic data collection effort. With the speeds here, we can see coming from Stow on the left side of the screen here, the speeds are basically close to the 40 mile per hour speed limit sign. Excuse me, speed limit sign that's around that area when you're coming from Stow. But on the other side of Martin Street, on Stow Street, people travel 24 miles per hour or all the way up to 32 miles per hour. On Martin Street, north of Stow, again, that speed ranges between 29 to 32 miles per hour. And then on Liberty Street, just around that curvature, as you're heading towards Stow Street, those speeds again range between 26 miles per hour to 32 miles per hour. So the speeds are quite a bit of a range, but it's still kind of high for the character of this area. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend too much time on the volumes. They are in the report that was provided to you. I hope you've had some time to review that. The main thing I wanted to show here is first how that traffic is really pretty directional. You're heading towards the South Acton station or the areas up in that direction if you come from Stow, and vice versa in the afternoon. But on the next slide, please, showing the pedestrian and bicycle volumes there, the stark contrast, but doesn't really tell the story because of the high vehicular volumes and accommodations. You really don't see that many people walking the street or biking it. But when we hosted the first public meeting, we had somebody that basically did their own little study and showed us a lot of pictures of joggers from the schools being on this road, bicycles using this road, and I know they use them and to connect into other areas or other bicycle routes in the town of Acton as well. So this specific time of the day and this single day in the year picture doesn't really talk about the whole picture here of how many people are really using the road or even going up to the Jones Field playground as well. Next slide, please. Moving over to the safety end and the crashes. The public safety officer provided us with the crash reports, and really what we saw, the major or the most common crash type was a single vehicle running out of control and either off to the side of the street, stopping off to the side of the street, or crashing into a fixed object, whether a utility pole, mailbox, and one of the stone walls, and the causes being inattention, distraction, distracted driving, possibly even an animal being on the road and veering away from it and crashing into something. But that was like the main cause that we saw out there for crashes. Oh, sorry, the main crash type that we saw out there for crashes. If you move to the next slide, please. The only vehicle-to-vehicle crash that we saw was on Martin Street, coming from the south and trying to enter that intersection. From what we read on the report, they were trying to enter, but somebody else cut them off and got rear-ended. But again, here, all the other crashes were those single vehicles, drivers losing control of their vehicles and running off the road. Next slide, please. Kind of setting up the stage for to show you how those alternatives that we looked into will look into this area in a high-level view. We use some software that creates this cross-section to show you how the area looks. This is a specific part of Stow Street where you have the houses on either side of the street. We're not showing the one that you have the trees on the other side, but you'll see it in the other slides. Next slide, please. When we hosted the first public meeting, some specific safety issues popped up. We talked already about some speeding. So speeding along Stow Street was the first one that we heard. Side distance at the intersections, we heard that mainly at Robin Street, but it comes into play over at Martin and Liberty and Stow, as that's like almost a five-legged intersection. How Liberty comes in, it ends up being quite of a large intersection as well. And I believe on the north side of Martin Street, the property is a bit up of a grade, a little hill there, so they can cut off a little bit the side distance. We've heard also that some of the crashes that happened out there may have not been in the crash reports, as it was understood by the people that attended the meeting that there were more crashes than what we showed in those two slides, the previous slides. We only had 13 slides from the reports in the 5-year period from 2020 to 2025. We've heard of the pedestrians, the cyclists that do use the road have to take up a lane. The pictures we also received from one of the residents did show that they were taking up a whole travel lane and vehicles had to go around them because there's no shoulder out there, nor any sidewalk, as we said before. And finally, there's quite a bit of commercial heavy vehicle traffic on Stow Street. One business called out was the gravel business on the north side of Jones Field there. Going up and down Stow Street to their quarry. I think it's on South Acton Road in Stow. Next slide, please. Some enhancements that were discussed right off the bat before we gone into anything we can propose were the speed feedback signs and the speed bumps. Those two I mentioned because those are some of the low-hanging fruit, quick implementation items that can happen. Teeing up Liberty Street, basically realigning it to intersect Stow Street at 90 degrees. That way you're pulling it away from the Martin Street intersection. by a couple of 100 feet, just about. And then the one-way Stow Street was something that was seen in one of the older reports that was available to us from the town. And we brought that up, and somebody actually also said, yeah, if it's feasible, why not? Let's look into it. So that was something we looked into our study that I'm going to show in a little bit in the presentation. Next slide, please. I wanted to bring this back into this presentation because when we're talking about traffic calming and bringing down the speeds, any of these elements that are shown on this slide right here can happen under any of the alternatives that I'm going to discuss that are specific to pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. So they're not limited to what alternative you are going to choose for the bicycles and the pedestrians. They can happen exclusively by themselves. Next slide, please. So now moving into the alternatives that were considered, the first one was, we named it aptly widening Stow Street. It was widening more to provide the shared use path that's shown on the south side of this slide here. I know it's not very clear. I don't know if we can zoom in, but they might disrupt a little bit the flow on the presentation. So that you can see the blue cloud saying proposed shared use path on the south side of the Stow Street here. Which shows the South Street as the south side mainly for this time of the preliminary design. It seemed to be less impactful, mainly on, if you see the location of the proposed boardwalk points over there. If the boardwalk crosses over some of these streams or even like the small lakes that you have out there, we wanted it to be short enough because those boardwalks are pretty expensive. Some of the quotes that we've gotten are up to like $2,000 per foot. So the shorter boardwalk you have, the better, the more cost efficient it is. But yeah, this shows that the shared use path on the south side, the two-lane roadway, one lane in each direction with a double yellow center line, and the intersections, the Robin Street intersection over here, and if we can pan down a little bit to show the Martin Street one. That's the Martin and Stow Street intersection, no Liberty Street coming in over here. That's another raised intersection, potential raised intersection. And you can see the Liberty Street coming in to Stow Street is its own intersection right there. They can be raised or it can be just flat. It doesn't have to be raised. It will really depend on the survey information and how costly would it be to make it raised, you know. So that's the one option that was considered. Next slide, please. The other, before I go to the next one, some cross sections over here for you to see, kind of visualize how that shared use path would look like in the area where the trees are only, the trees and the wetlands. Obviously, we have to consider tree impacts over here. Next slide, please. When we go into the residential area, this is how that shared use path would look while keep maintaining the one travel lane in each direction as well. One thing I wanted to point out on this one is when an actual survey is available, we wanted to look into how we can balance any kind of impacts on either side of the street over here and not, I know this may seem like you're only taking land on one side of the street and those properties only. If there's a way to balance them out, that's definitely something we would want to look into, those impacts at the residences. Next slide, please. Now going into the second alternative, aptly named one-way pair, because we were looking into making Stow Street one-way. In this specific example, it's away from Martin Street and towards Robin Street or towards the town of Stow. In order to be able to kind of create, to maintain the connectivity throughout this little circle area, Liberty Street could also become one-way going towards Martin Street. And Robin Street actually could also become one-way going towards the Liberty. That opened up the opportunity to create actually a sidewalk along Robin Street and Liberty Street without too many impacts on those properties down those streets. And you keep the connectivity throughout this little circle. Now, this specific alternative is not showing anything west of Robin Street because there's no way to keep any circulation of traffic over there. There's no other side streets to connect traffic around. So that specific segment would be exactly the same as alternative one, two lanes, one lane in each direction with a shared use path on the south side of the street. And another thing to point out, we show roundabout alternatives for either the Robin Street intersection or the Martin Street intersection because of the safety improvements that they provide, slow down traffic, allow you to enter the intersection without having to worry about speeding traffic coming through, and much safer also for the pedestrians and the bicycles that can cross through there. Just an option to consider. They don't have to be the full-blown modern roundabouts. They can also be smaller traffic circles because even those still would reduce the speeds at the intersection. Next slide, please. Again, a cross-section over at the area where you can do the one-way, and there will be over where the houses are as well. That could potentially reduce the impacts at the residential area as well. Next slide, please. The third alternative we looked at, and we eliminated earlier on, was what we call just a boardwalk one. So this one really pulls you off completely off street. But unfortunately, you have to go through quite a few properties, kind of at the back of their houses. The orange parts of that line there where the boardwalk path would be is the actual boardwalk because you have wetlands and you potentially have to go above it and not build through it because the environmental permitting for that would be a nightmare. The blue parts are just paved asphalt where you could actually go through and keep it level and not have to worry about wetlands being impacted. But as I mentioned before, boardwalk is pretty expensive, and as the next slide would show, this alternative, the third alternative, looked into 2,000 feet total of a boardwalk. And mainly that would be the higher cost part of this alternative, bringing it up to $4.9 million total when you consider also the other impacts through the properties. But when we look into the other two alternatives, they're less, with the second one being the least expensive one at $3 million, relatively least expensive when you consider the second one being only $500,000 more expensive. They have the same amount of boardwalk there, and the environmental permitting is still there. They still have to do some of it because you're gonna impact some trees. And build those boardwalks over those wetlands. Or the little lakes there and the streams there are there, but it's much less than the boardwalk itself, and more properties being impacted though. So this is kind of the quick snapshot of what we've determined for impacts for each one of these alternatives that we studied. Next slide, please. After we kind of did all this work, we came back to the public and presented our findings at that point. We still wanted some more feedback to see what the public thought was on mainly the two alternatives, the widening and the one-way alternative. Here you can see a snapshot of what the public liked for the alternatives, the Liberty Street realignment, which can happen under either alternative. It was definitely a big thumbs up. Medians at the intersections were not really shown the alternatives, but it was one of the traffic calming elements we discussed. They thought that was a good idea. Same thing with the curb extensions at the intersections. What the public was concerned with was the roundabouts, heavy vehicle braking noise when they come into a full stop, which, if I may add, if we were able to provide traffic calming elements throughout the whole corridor, if those vehicles are slowing down or coming to a stop from a slower speed anyways, that noise may not be as bad as the thought is. I mentioned already the stone walls and the trees, that those would have to be looked into detail when the design actually begins, and we have available survey to see what those impacts may be. And we had heard that there was a double yellow center line before down Stow Street, and that seemed to increase the speeding. We're hoping to kind of couple this with the double yellow center line with maybe narrower travel lanes, which actually would help reduce those speeds as well, because you're getting closer to the vehicles traveling on that road. Next slide, please. Continuing on that input from the second public meeting, more specifically to the second alternative, the one-way streets were thought to cause wrong-way driving. They could cause the wrong-way driving. We heard about flooding on Liberty Street and Stow Street in the past, so a one-way street may actually completely close off one street if that were to happen. So how do you get to those properties on either one of those streets? And we were asked to give consideration to the delivery trucks, how they were able to make deliveries and how the local businesses, like on Liberty Street, on Stowe Street, will be accommodated with this one-way options. Next slide, please. Then we had that online survey I mentioned earlier that was available to the whole town, not only the people that attended the meetings, the two public meetings, but the whole town through the link that we had that we gave over to Evan and made it available to the town website. What we heard through that survey, alternative one, this is really a summarized voice that we heard through those survey takers. It provided a more balanced, a less disruptive option, whereas alternative two brought up concerns with traffic diversion, neighborhood disruption, and they were concerned with the roundabout operations. Well, we asked them to also vote on a preferred alternative, and as you can see from this little pie chart there, the first alternative, the widening, outvoted, and the second alternative, one-way, by 78%. Next slide, please. So what we concluded from this study was that the alternative one is the preferred alternative based on the public input and the neighborhood concerns. The next steps we basically suggest at this point is to do that field survey to get very detailed information of the area and the right-of-way lines, the property lines, in order to actually determine what the impact would be of that alternative one. Come back to the public and discuss the refined impacts and gather some more public feedback. And then if everything is all said and good with those impacts, continue that alternative one forward with the design and continue working with those impacted abutters on the right-of-way takings that would be required under this alternative one. At this point, I would like to open it up to any questions. Sorry, I know it was a lot. Those 8 months condensed down to one, but I didn't want to take up too much of your time tonight.
Thank you so much for that information. The report was great. I really appreciated how much detail and all of the graphics and the photos that were provided by residents. I have a question about the cost. The cost analysis that showed that alternative two was slightly less, does that also include adding sidewalks along Liberty and Robbins?
Yes, so those are basically on both of the alternatives. If you could do anything, obviously the property takings would have to be taken into consideration there. But yeah, mainly the number two definitely included the Liberty and the Stowe Street, Liberty and Robbins Street sidewalks.
So both alternative one and alternative two include a sidewalk along Liberty and Robbins?
Mainly the cost of the sidewalk and not the property takings for alternative one, yes.
Okay, all right. Any comments, questions from the board? Pam?
So, yes, thank you for this information. So that survey, the results, were, sent a strong message. But I believe you said that that was a town-wide survey. Is there any sense of, looking at the, the neighborhood impact, if the results would come out similarly? Like, do you have any sense of what, how the neighbors and abutters weighed in?
The neighbors and the abutters that were present at the public meeting gave us their thoughts then, and basically what I mentioned before on the one or two slides before, their thoughts on the neighborhood being disrupted by the one-way circulation there, a longer travel time to get where they needed to go, and just the access to their homes from that one-way operation. It just seemed very disruptive to them, and also the wrong way driving possibility that came up was definitely something that we heard during those public meetings from those residents that were there. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess I've got a question, and this is a great survey. Really an excellent job you folks have done. And it's only been something that people have been asking for about 40 years, so I guess it's about time that we tackle this one. But most of the work that you're proposing in either scenario certainly is going to impact wetlands, floodplain, that sort of thing. And my question is whether you've had an opportunity to preview this with the Conservation Commission. I would recommend that you meet with them. I was at a meeting with them some months ago when we talked about a short section of Stow Street that was going to impact some wetlands, and we got into some rough sailing. We got through it, but I think it would certainly be a politic thing to do to get an opportunity to get in front of the Conservation Commission and show them what the options are. I think they'll probably agree with what the majority of folks have agreed with, but I think it's certainly a good time to do that. Thank you.
And thank you for your comment, and certainly, I think just at the point that we were, Conservation Commission would have gotten in more detail than we could provide because we didn't have a survey to really understand what those impacts would be, but there certainly will be impacts, you're right about that.
Yes, thank you for this. A number of residents of Stow Street have contacted me over the past couple of years, and so there are definitely people concerned about this. I really only have one question and then kind of a short-term suggestion. Is the reconstruction here enough to that we would be reconstructing the culverts that go under the streets? One of the areas of Stow Street especially is subject to flooding in heavy rains. It can get 6 inches or more deep there, which is reasonably deep to drive a car through. And it seems to me that I don't know how much of the street we're reconstructing here. If we're reconstructing it down, is this the right time to also do the culvert work that goes underneath Stow Street?
Thank you for that question. Well, we were not considering any construction of the culverts. Why? Because of the expense of it, but also how much time it will actually take to actually design that, because there's quite a bit of analysis and then needs to go through that, what you mentioned exactly for the flooding, the hydraulics, how much water can it actually handle. But since we have heard that flooding issue as well, so there might be a point for further discussion if this actually goes into design. Is it really worth considering reconstructing this culverts or not? That's definitely a good question right there. But all the options consider the boardwalks at those points of the culverts do not touch the culverts. They're not in a condition, from my understanding, that they need the reconstruction. But if the flooding is such a major issue and it happens consistently, and the culverts are worth looking into, this is the proper time to do it. But yeah, as I said, the boardwalks were mainly looked into to avoid touching those culverts completely.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it makes sense. So DPW would coordinate with other projects if it made sense to do that. The other thing, which is a suggestion just for Evan, one of the things noted at the public forum is that as you're coming eastbound from Stow, the first speed limit sign in Acton on Stow Street is about 0.2 of a mile into Acton. It might be good if we put another speed limit sign at the border. That would be a minor traffic order by this board, right? It's not changing the speed limit or anything. It's just posting it on the border. And I think that's important because in my, just personal experience, the eastbound speeds it didn't seem to be reflected in the, so much in the statistics, but the eastbound speeds are faster than the westbound speeds, and they're faster the closer you get to the Stow border, because I think people kind of take their foot off the gas and let their car slow down, but it takes some time to do that. Anyway, that's just a suggestion, a very simple suggestion.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can add, and that's from people exiting Stow, entering Acton, right?
Yes, at the border now, we have the sign that we have on many borders that says 25 miles an hour unless otherwise posted. But it's not it doesn't say what the speed limit there is. And then if you get 0.2 of a mile in, it says speed limit 30. But by that, the speed limit is 45, I think, in Stow, right? So people take a while to get down from 45, to 30. And, they don't even know that they're supposed to do that until a couple of tenths of a mile in. And I also live in South Acton, not on Stow Street, but in my personal experience, again, the speeds are higher the closer you get to the Stow border. By the time you get to that Martin Street stop sign and Liberty Street stop sign, people are a little bit slower, but, as you get first entering Acton, it's pretty fast.
Yeah, I think considering the speed in Stow entering into Acton, I think it makes a lot of sense to put a speed limit sign there at the border.
Do you have anything? Go ahead.
I think the traffic calming is really important. And I know that Stow Street and the neighborhood has been crying out for sidewalks for so long. So if there's a way that we can integrate that in a plan, that would be excellent. I'm always intrigued by those, I think that asphalt bike lane pedestrian photo, the visual is so awesome. I think the boardwalks are too fancy, even though they sound lovely. But I feel like just traffic calming and a pedestrian lane would be awesome. And I'm intrigued by the teeing up Liberty. I love the New England, intersections. They make it fun.
Thank you very much for those comments. Yes, and one thing I forgot to mention earlier, that teeing up of Liberty, I think because of how much we heard, that intersection feels like a big intersection. We even consider it as it's happening in the future, regardless of nothing else happening for the peds or whatnot. Our no build future analysis really considered Liberty already teed up, just because it made sense. I've driven through that intersection myself, not only the field study. I come to Acton often enough. I have kids that take over to the Discovery Museum, so I always take a chance to go by there. There's a playground over there too for my kid. So I've gone there. That intersection is certainly something else. And I know that stop signs on Stow Street were recently installed too. It used to be free flow Stow Street, so, and people don't pay attention to that stop sign many times, is what we heard on the public meetings too, so.
Before I open it up to public comment, I just have a couple of concerns that I want to share. So I am not a Stow Street abutter, but I also live in South Acton and have spent 20 years driving from South Acton to Stow a few times a week, or Bolton and back again. So I know the road well, I know the intersection well. I'm really happy that you're proposing to tee up Liberty, because even for me, going through there so frequently, it is definitely confusing. You never know whether you should go or let the other person go. So I think that's a great change. My concern is the wetlands and how much wetlands there are and how close they are to the roadway. And it's been documented, studied, that when impervious surfaces are increased, you increase the magnitude of flooding, you increase the risk of flooding. So when the Director of Public Works, more than a year ago, I think, suggested, when we were discussing sidewalks on Stow Street, to create a one-way that would enable the shared use pathway safety for pedestrians and cyclists without widening the roadway and impacting the wetlands. I got really excited. I understand that it's going to be inconvenient. It's going to be a change for people to, and people will be confused by it, but they'll get used to it. There are one-way changes that we've done in town before. I'm looking at the conclusion and seeing that you are suggesting that alternative one is the preferred, but it seems like it's based on the survey results and the public input that mostly, to answer Pam's question about the survey results, I don't remember if it was 58 or 68 or 78, but I'm sure it was mostly people from that area, not, people up in North Acton weighing in on this. So I'm really hesitant to make a decision between alternative 1 and alternative 2 based on worry about change or, when it says that people see the alternative 1 as the least disruptive, it seems to me, looking at all of the data from the traffic studies that you've done, the counts and the crashes, the speeds, the level of service declines for alternative 1 and alternative 2, or improvements, it seems like it's the least disruptive to existing traffic circulation and cars. And it's actually more disruptive to the wetlands and to properties. It's going to be disruptive to twice the number of properties. And we hear a lot in town when traffic engineers come in and propose little traffic circles, mini roundabouts, like, no, why do we need that? That's so complicated, so confusing. But the data is clear that they are safer. They're safer for circulation, they're safer for vehicle circulation, for pedestrians and cyclists. So I know that people don't typically like them, but, anybody who's spent any time in Europe, a month on vacation or living there, the roundabouts are everywhere and traffic flows and they're much more safe. So I just wanted to say that I'm pretty concerned about going with alternative 1 because it's going to be more impervious surface. The impacts, I'm so grateful to Dean for mentioning getting input from the Conservation Commission, because if we bring them in to look at this for permitting after this board has decided on this, one option or another, then I think the response is going to be, why are you asking for our input when you've already made the decision? Now our hands are tied and we have to permit this because the select board has made this decision. So I'm not sure, if we're making a decision tonight about which alternative. I'm definitely interested to hear from residents that live in the area. Also, I'm pretty sure we probably have Transportation Advisory Committee folks here. And I'd love any response to that concern from either one of you or both of you.
Yeah, if I can go first. Definitely myself, I wasn't looking for a decision, just wanted to present the findings of the study. And honestly, the really true question, the true answer is, without having a survey to really give you a good idea what those impacts may be, even the one-way may be impactful. Maybe not as much as the first alternative, you're correct about that. But the thing is, for the one-way roadway, the main idea would be emergency vehicles. If I just give you an 11-foot lane and you have a breakdown of a car there, how is the emergency vehicle supposed to get around you or even get to you, or even the other traffic behind you get around you to let that emergency vehicle get to you? So we would have to be looking at a minimum, I think many towns and other municipalities using 20 feet of a roadway width in order to, even for a single travel lane, to have that stopped vehicle be on the side of the street while the people can get around you, and the emergency vehicle be able to reach you. So you're still gonna have the 20 feet just for the roadway, just for the vehicles, and then you need at least 3-foot buffer plus a 10-foot shared use path. So you're still ending up with like a 33-foot wide impervious area. Well, a 30 if you take out the buffer, which would be grass. So not really knowing fully the picture there from without having a survey, it's tough to answer the question of how impactful it can be, either option can be. The other thing to consider too is within the mainly wetlands and the tree areas west of Robbins, if you were to go down to 10-foot travel lanes for the lower speed, but also less impervious area, and maybe potentially a narrower shared use path, you could go down to 8 feet. Maybe it won't impact as much as you would think with a two-way roadway and being maintained. Regardless though, ever under the one-way option, still west of Robbins, you have to have the two-way roadway because there's no way to detour the traffic around if you went with one-way. So that would be the most impactful area regardless. So whether you go with the one-way or not, That's the one area with the most wetland impacts. It might not be wetlands, it might be more of the trees because, again, without the survey and flagging out wetlands, they might not be as close to the roadway as you think. We may be impacting more trees than the wetlands, basically. So it's kind of the broad view on that end. And the one way, sure, it may seem more impactful from what the feedback was. Traffic analysis alone at the intersections did not show any degradation of the level of service. Actually, it showed to be like maybe a couple of seconds more, but that's not really impactful
It
at all.
sounds like a lot when it goes from A to C.
Oh, no, I
That's a
was
very bad
basically
grade,
saying the
but it's
same
just a
level of
few-
service.
Okay.
Saying the same level of service.
Not a huge time.
Yeah, it would be more the travel time for everybody going around there, and maybe even the school buses going around to pick up everybody. Maybe you have to have the one specific spot to pick up everybody, so the school buses don't get as impacted with that. And again, emergency vehicle response, if they have to go all the way around to get back to where they are. So it's travel time for everybody, but mainly the emergency vehicles you have to consider, and school buses too, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Bob. Without survey, it's difficult to quantify exactly what the impacts are, alternative one versus alternative two. I do know we're, in this next phase of design, we'll be able to look at some other options that aren't included in this study. We can, have a pervious shared use path, something like that. We can also, the boardwalks are an attempt at reducing those types of impacts to the wetlands. There's more elements that come in the next phase of the design that we can incorporate to kind of give you a better picture and better answer to that question, and also look at ways to reduce the impact as much as possible.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And in terms of the boardwalks, I agree. It would be nice, but it would also be buggy to walk through there to the playground. The pervious pathway, I think we would have to think really carefully, because I know that there's one along Main Street, and there's a requirement for the, I think it's twice a year sanding, and eventually they become impervious because the cost of that and the time that's required to maintain it as a pervious surface is pretty substantial. I see a lot of folks that I know are from that neighborhood, so if anybody is wanting to step forward and share some comments or ask questions, you can come to the podium. Just share your name and your address, and you have to push the button on the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, this is confusing because I'm Laura Fay, and I'm from 83 Stow Street and 84 Stow Street. Because the property that goes from Robbins down to Jones Field, there's only two property owners, and one is the town, and the other's me. So I am perfectly willing to give as much land as you want. And I know there was a concern about protecting the trees and the rock walls. You'll have enough land to build a 10-foot path, shared use path, but you could put it at 30 feet in if you needed to. So just consider that you have free reign with this piece of property.
Thank you. You're on the record.
Yes. Okay, and I will say that the idea of a shared use path versus a sidewalk, I think is very important for the neighborhood needs, because we have a playground, we have the rail trail. Right at the end, we also have, we're getting new businesses too. And so many children want to go to the playground, and they want to ride their bikes, and they want to go down there and play in the volleyball courts and run around in the field. And a bicycle path with 10 feet is a much safer thing, and they can ride back and forth. And one thing I know is that sidewalks cannot use CPA funds, but a shared use path might be eligible for a partial funding from the CPA. So I just thought that might be interesting to consider. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think that I'm clear that even with that pair of one-way, it was a shared use path along Stow, and then the sidewalk is just on Liberty Street.
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know about CPA funding. Go ahead.
Just want to start by saying thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been a great discussion. I'm David Wolfson. I live on 108 Stow Street. I know I've sent emails to probably most of you about the safety issues here, so thank you for the responsiveness. It's exciting to see us get to this point. Regarding number one or number two, I'm good with either, right? Excited to see a shared use path being contemplated. We've got 2 little kids, and to Laura's point, right, we want to be able to walk to the playground, walk to the bike, get on bikes and feel confident that we will be safe, right? We do not do that today, would not do that today. And so I think with that in mind, my only comment to this committee is just to think about intermediate steps. Everything we're proposing here is lovely. It's great, but it's long-term. I just know the reality is it takes a while to implement these things, to fund these things. So in reality, for me, with 2 little kids, I'm interested in what intermediate steps there might be, whether it's signage, pulling the speed limit sign even closer to the Stow line. Anything that's, I know nothing is free, but some of the smaller quick wins, if there's anything we can do in terms of signs, police presence, I would encourage everyone to think about what those opportunities might be. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Corin Vickery. I'm from 2 Apple Valley Drive, which is that tiny little street that comes off of Liberty. Thanks, everybody, for this. I just wanted to first comment that most of my neighborhood had no idea any of this was in the works of planning until April when that survey came out. And so I don't know what process there was in terms of notifying residents, particularly along Liberty and Apple Valley Drive. But I think that maybe some of the information you got in those early meetings was not entirely representative because most of my neighborhood had no clue that those meetings were happening. But we did catch wind of the survey and we texted it to all of our neighbors and friends. And so the participation in that second survey was much more representative of our area. And I think what you're seeing in that is the traffic diverting all of the Stow Street northbound traffic onto Robbins and onto Liberty is going to double, triple the amount of cars on those 2 streets because we're sort of almost side streets to the Stow Street. And so the traffic impacts for all of those houses is going to be a lot bigger than with option 1. And I think that's one of the reasons why you were seeing such a discrepancy in your survey results versus maybe early participation when not all of the neighborhood really knew to participate. Not everybody can come to in-person meetings. And so moving forward, if we're doing more planning and surveying of the neighborhoods, I would really encourage you guys, or I don't know who does this, to provide more online survey options for people who are 2 working parents, young kids at home, they can't come to a meeting like this. I'm here on the request of 7 different families who can't be here today. I really think that it is important to take all of those other considerations into account because the folks on Liberty are really, really opposed to that option too. We moved there because of that country feel, the rock walls, the Stonefield farmlands. I have a farm. I'm concerned about the tee-up of Liberty and how we're going to be able to negotiate livestock trailers into Martin Street for myself and also the horse farm. I think teeing up is a good idea in many ways because that intersection is confusing. I get cut off a zillion times a day because I'm in and out of that intersection 20 times a day. But the tightness of the turn is going to be really difficult with livestock trailers. And that's because we have farms down that road on Liberty. That's a really important impact to consider. I had one more point and then completely blanking. So I think I'll sign off, but. Anyway.
You can come back after we take online comments.
Okay.
And let your neighbors know that they can always Zoom in and speak
Yeah,
online.
I actually didn't know that was an option, so I'll let
Now you
them
do.
know. So,
Thanks.
all right, thank you.
Could I quickly
Yeah, go
add
ahead.
something to that? Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for those comments, I appreciate that. I just wanted to say the traffic disruption is definitely a summary of one of those things we did hear that. with the one-way, basically rerouting the one-direction traffic down to Liberty, can be opposed by the people living down the street, so we definitely got that through the survey. And when it comes to the design for the trailers on the intersection, well, thank you. Yeah, that's certainly going to be a point when it actually gets into the design to look into with further coordination from our bodies and everybody driving through there. But obviously, yeah, that wasn't looked into in depth at this point. But thank you very much for that comment.
I'm Ann Chang. I live on 8 Billing Street, and I'm one of the people who've been complaining for 40 more years. And since I've been to 2 different DOT hearings within the last 2 weeks, and I know that nothing's going to happen for this one for another maybe 3 years, why can't we put a line down the center of Stow Street to divide the traffic and put fog lines on the side? And again, that would be, a very simple thing to do. Coming out tonight from Robin Street, I have to pull out to see which way, what the traffic is coming down Stow Street, because the things need to be cut again. At the intersection of the 5-way stop sign where the bicycles never stop, the weeds are really high, and there's a granite block, which makes it so those coming down Stow Street cannot see the traffic coming down Liberty Street. They can be hidden behind the block. So that's something that can be changed easily without doing the other thing. I think you're wrong about the boardwalk, because I think from the first culvert has been changed within the last, I'd say, 10 years. The culvert on Liberty Street has not been changed for ever. So I think that needs to be looked at. When you're talking about teeing up Liberty Street, I know you're talking about at the intersection of Martin and Stow. Have you looked at the teeing of Liberty Street or fixing the Liberty Street intersection off of Robin Street? I mean, it's like very extremely wide, and it was put. I think you need a boardwalk from the culvert all the way to the end of the first house on the left-hand side, which is Martin Gratz's house. And then I don't know what you can do for a sidewalk. But if you do it on the other side, you need it from the culvert all the way down to the intersection, because it floods. In the winter, the water comes up to the street. The ice comes up to the street. Well, we haven't had a lot of ice, but it does come up to the street. And sometimes it goes over the street. So I think that Mr. Charter's idea of speaking to the Conservation Commission prior to your doing any more construction ideas is very good, because you're going to put them in a position that is not tenable for them. Because as they say, if the selectmen say it's okay, well, what is the Conservation Commission going to do, even though it's not okay for the environment? And I'm opposed to a one-way street. And I don't know why, if you were doing a one-way street, you would do it this way instead of doing it towards the... Okay. Have you done a count of the cars that come out of Martin Street and go up Stow Street, as opposed to the number of cars that come from Stow Street that go all the way through to the train? Well, I haven't seen them, but that's okay. And the last thing I will say, did you realize that the area in Stow Street, between, I guess maybe it's Tuttle, down to the Acton line, is a race course? I mean, when it gets a little dusky at night, you can hear the cars racing all the way down.
Thank you very much for your input.
You got some temporary measures to think about.
Good evening. My name is Ramachandran Balakrishna. I'm the outgoing chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. It's great to see this discussion about... I'm probably too tall for this. Okay. It's great to see all this discussion going on. Stow Street complaints have been coming in for way longer than I've been in this town, and I've been here for only about 12 years. But having said that, we have fielded a lot of complaints from residents who have attended our meetings, and we had at some point suggested some temporary measures, or at least look into some temporary measures, and I think Evan can speak more about this. I just wanted to find out what the results of those temporary interventions were. What was the feedback? Did it do anything? What kind of response did we see from the traffic conditions and from the residents around there, just to see how it was perceived?
I'm sorry, you're talking about temporary traffic calming measures?
Right.
As far as the resident feedback for these options, I haven't provided any options to any of the residents. What we're talking about is more long-term options in this study for traffic calming measures. Things like, temporary speed bumps, signage, stuff like that. That's not something I would typically seek resident feedback from them for. That it's more of a, we have a process in place for that where, we have the traffic calming procedures now.
Correct,
where they
yeah.
have to submit something, I review it, and then we have a committee that votes on it. It's
No, I
not really-
understand that, but I think there was a discussion at one point about temporarily trying something like a small section of it close to Jones Street being made one way with some concrete barriers and so on. So I thought some of this was actually piloted on the ground. So that's what I was asking about, not...
I'm not familiar with what section you're talking about. We were talking about temporarily making a section of roadway one-way?
Yes, closer to Jones Field. It was at least discussed.
Evan and Roma, can you take this offline?
Yes,
and
we
maybe
can.
an
I thought it
an
had already been
email
done and it would be a quick
exchange?
answer, but that's all
Yeah,
right. Thank
all
you.
right, thank you. I know that there were a couple of hands raised online.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have two hands that are raised. First one is calling user 1.
Hi, this is Tara from over in West Acton. I don't have a stake in this game, but I would like to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So I just want to remind folks about the eminent domain process, and if the property owner that owns land that the town needs to implement a plan doesn't want it, they don't have to sign the consent form. Even if they're pressured, they can just say no, and the town would have to go to town meeting to get 2/3 vote, which is very hard to achieve if the residents don't like it. I'm glad that you like what's going on, but please watch carefully and don't sign the thing until you love it. The second thing is, please encourage the town to send paper notices, within 600 feet of a proposed major intersection change, so that the owners get a paper thing in the mail, as opposed to relying on social media and email lists and all this kind of stuff. A paper notice. I don't think it's too hard to do that. I want to say about lines, I don't like the idea of lines. Europe is taking away lines. They say that it indicates it's a race course and people are allowed to speed. So the more lines, the more speeding. Also, insurance companies know this, and if you get a line down your street, your property insurance goes up. I love the evolutionary approach with calming measures before full-scale one-way option, etc. But again, I feel like there could be more transparency rather than private meetings approving calming measures. I feel like there needs to be more transparency. And in general, I am in favor of roundabouts and four-way stops. Thank you so much.
We have two more people with their hands raised. Next one is Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Kane. I'm from 25 Overlook Drive. And I, first of all, just wanted to echo again, if there's anything that we can do to kind of help traffic calming measures in the meantime, as we're going through the process of getting the shared use path plan set in place, that would be fabulous. But I also just wanted to share A little personal story. I was actually involved in an accident on Stow Street that was not captured in the police reports. And I was walking with a child that I was babysitting who lives on Robin Street. We were walking. The child was in a stroller and I had their dog to the playground. A car came speeding down Stow Street and came within an inch of hitting me and the child, and unfortunately did hit the dog, who passed away. So I just wanted to share that because I think there is a very real impact of why we need a shared use path on that road, especially with the amount of families with children that live on Stow Street and roads off of Stow Street, and then having the playground right down there. I know there would be a lot more people that would feel comfortable walking to the playground with a shared use path. So I just wanted to share that.
The next call-in user is MK.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, this is Michelle Kilpatrick. I live on Prescott Road. That's the Robin Street neighborhood. It really hasn't been brought up. No one has said this, but there are over 90 or almost 90 houses in our neighborhood. Robin Street, Billing Street, Prescott, and Overlook. Because you can't see us from Stow Street, people kind of forget that we're here. But it's filled with families, lots of children, lots of walkers, lots of dogs, lots of runners, and lots of bicycles. We've lived here for over 30 years, and I personally have been asking for sidewalks for all of that time. I wanted to thank Laura Fay. She has done a tremendous amount of work and amazing studies of the area. She has a binder that she's brought to every meeting that we could find. And in 25 years ago, we were probably third on the list. Then we were fifth on the list, 10th on the list. And then our street was completely ignored for probably 15 years. So to weigh in on some of the topics that were brought up, the engineer is absolutely right that five-way stop, it's not a four-way stop, and it's not cute. It's dangerous, and when it was a throughway, I think it was better. Now that it's a five-way stop, it really is kind of crazy. It's not a cute New England anything. It's terrible. I like the shared stop, but if we could at least get a sidewalk, a shared path, but if we could at least get a sidewalk, something to make it less dangerous. And thank you to Rebecca for sharing her story. We have 4 children, and there are so many kids in our neighborhood. And if you walk on Stow Street, which we all have to get to the playground, and now the rail trail, you literally, or the train station, no one's mentioned that, walking to this train station. Lots of our neighbors do that. You literally take your life into your hands walking on Stow Street. I've talked to many, many neighbors in the Robin Street area, and most want the two-way traffic because of the wrong-way driver problem, and that's been a real issue in Massachusetts just in the last few months. And we know someone that got killed in one of those wrong-way accidents on Route 93, personally. So two-way traffic is much better. There are always people that make mistakes with one-way streets, and it's a problem. Most of the people I've talked to in the Robin Street area have said absolutely no roundabout. They're not cute, they're not safe, and for this particular area, Stow Street is a main road connecting 2 towns, but even more than 2 towns. Lots of people use that to cut through to Acton or to get to Stow. And a roundabout will only slow down our neighborhood, but it will also create a lot of unnecessary traffic. And the roundabout in Concord at the prison definitely is not, I would never call that safer. There's also an issue maybe the engineer could address, and it's the existence of the telephone poles that are along Stow Street. Those are very dangerous, and you really have that. I mean, it slows down traffic, I guess, but you have to really be careful, especially when there are snowbanks, because the road gets so narrow that those existing telephone poles along Stow Street should be addressed. Also, for traffic calming, I would personally request no islands in the middle of the road. I don't think any are proposed, but the huge island that they just created on Main Street, kind of, sort of near Stop and Shop, well, just past it, it's just an albatross in the road. You kind of have to almost swerve to miss it, and it's dangerous. When there are snowstorms and plow trucks out, I don't think islands in the middle of the road are good or safe. Also, I've done a lot of research on pervious pavement. They used it on a little subdivision in our neighborhood. On a sidewalk or a mixed use path, it does not take a lot more to maintain. If it's on a roadway, then you have to sweep it but they don't even really use sand anymore. They use salt in the winters. So it doesn't really cost a lot more. Also, some of those culverts that people are talking about under Stow Street, some of them are from the colonial times. And there was a neighbor on the corner of Robbins and Stow Street. She has since moved, but she had walked me through Stow Street. So at one point, and she knew where they all were. I don't remember all of them, but there are several culverts going under the street that are from colonial times. So you may want to take a look at those also. And also, I heard one of the selectmen mention it could be buggy. It won't be a buggy problem. The bug problem here, walking on Stow Street, are ticks. The grass gets to be knee or waist or hip high. And when we used to have our dog and walk on Stow Street, he would always come back with ticks because the ticks are always in the tall grass on the side of Stow Street. So the ticks are what we're concerned about, not flying bugs. It won't be buggy on a mixed path. And having the tall, hip-high grass gone and having a clear path would be really, really helpful and so much safer. All of our family members in our house have had some type of tick disease, and getting rid of that tall grass would be helpful. Even right now, it needs to be mowed or gotten rid of right now. So that's just some input. And I thank everybody that's been involved with this. It's been a long time coming, and it's a huge safety issue. And we all really appreciate the fact that this could be a possibility for our area. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one more comment in the room. Thank you. My name is Samantha Knock, and I live at 81 Stow Street. Keep it really brief. We're excited about the possibility of any sort of traffic calming of a shared pedestrian way. I bring the perspective of a mom to young kids, which we've talked about. I have a 3- and a 6-year-old who love the playground, love the rail trail. We also go to Blossom Station Child Care Center, which is linked from the beginning of the rail trail. So it's a convenient way for us to actually access our child care, is to walk. I also have been a commuter for the last 13 years from my house to get to the Boston Hospital where I work. And when we first moved there, we didn't have another car. We also couldn't honestly afford to pay to park, nor at that point could you really find a parking spot. So walking for me has been a necessity. I've had to walk to the train station, and something that isn't represented in any reports is how many times I've been harassed. I have in the last month been harassed by someone who I was taking, I mean, somebody said, taking your life in your hands, kind of putting yourself at risk. I dropped my daughter at school and was walking back with a double stroller, and I had a truck that was driving towards me, and I thought they were driving a little fast. I gave just a little calming hand signal, and I had them roll down their window and stop and tell me basically what a bad mother I was. And I didn't even have a child with me at that point in time. I've had trucks drive past me, turn around and come back to yell at me. I've had people play chicken with me in the road like they're going to hit me. I've had one incident where I was walking on a snowy evening coming back from the hospital, and someone demands that I get in their car because I was being so unsafe. Just lots of incidents. Again, this would be life-changing for us to have this, and to support some sort of immediate action. Really just trimming the street so you can walk off. It's full of poison ivy, and the bamboo that is coming up, especially near the intersection of Stow Street and Martin, you cannot get off the road, and it's right where people are whipping around at that 5th Street intersection, and I hurry through there as fast as I possibly can because it is, nobody can see anybody really at that. So if we could just trim that down, get that invasive plant out of there, that could be an immediate step. So thank you.
All right, I think it's very clear that everybody is in support of making this area safer for pedestrians and cyclists. And I look forward to hearing more from you after you do the survey and connect with Conservation Commission. I think it's absolutely critical to engage with the consideration of culvert work at the same time, just because of the water issues and the wetlands. And it would be great if we could get some temporary measures, flashing speed limit, feedback sign, trimming vegetation. And I just want to thank everybody for sharing your very passionate comments and your stories with us tonight. And thank you, Evan and Bob. Appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, and I just want to make it clear that I was talking about going on a boardwalk through the middle of the wetlands behind people's houses. The shared use path that's paved is not going to be buggy, but if you went right through the wetlands between Stow and Liberty, that might be a little buggy. But I'm so sorry about the ticks there and the poison ivy. All right, next up on our agenda is a presentation by our Transportation Advisory Committee.
Madam Chair, before we get into it, Rama, I did receive your presentation, so as you go through, and I apologize, we weren't able to connect before the meeting, but as you go through, if you say next slide, I can advance the slide.
Apologies for sending the presentation that late, but that's how it's always been these days. I think I'll start out by thanking the Select Board and our new liaison, Pam, for facilitating this on extremely short notice. So we've kind of assembled this in the last week or so. Once again, my name is Rama Balakrishna. I'm the outgoing chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. Been in this role for more than 2 years. Our new chair is right here, Chris.
I'm Chris Brandon. I'm the incoming chair of the TAC. And if I could just say a little bit.
Sure, absolutely.
Before you start. I mean, I've been on the TAC for a couple of years now. Rama's a few more years than me, and I had never sort of seen anything official that said what's expected of us. Sort of through talking with the other people, I got some idea of what we were working on. But as an incoming chair, I was thinking I'd really like to know, I'd like some reinforcement of what the Select Board would like us to be working on, looking at, focusing on. Very recently, I learned that there was a document created in 2020, and I think Rama hadn't seen it either, Until just the last month, we've seen it. And so that's certainly helpful, but I think it's still, having been 6 years since then, and the select board is rolled over and the TAC is rolled over, I think it would just be worth going back and revisiting, what the expectations are of our committee, so that we can do the best that we can do. And with that, Rama was very generous in agreeing to actually put it together, the presentation together. So.
All right. So this is a 2-slide presentation, so we're not going to take up too much of your time. If you can go to the first one. Thank you. So as Chris mentioned, there is a charge from the Select Board to the Transportation Advisory Committee, the last one dated 2020. I got onto the committee a little after that, and I was not aware of this, so it just cropped up in the last couple of weeks. It's a 2-page document, I believe is accessible on the website now, right? Yeah. Obviously, it should be reviewed, but what I've done here is to summarize what we see as the key roles of Transportation Advisory Committee as described in that document. So from the charge from 2020, we see TAC is supposed to be a channel of communication, both directions, from the town to the residents, and also to listen to the residents' concerns and so on. TAC makes recommendations to the select board, to the town meeting, to the town manager and other committees on anything transportation related. Typically, this has happened by request. We have not necessarily gone after these recommendations on our own, but when engineering department or someone else comes and asks us to weigh in on something, we have discussions and we weigh in on them. We engage with consultants when they come and present their studies and so on. TAC engages with all the regional and local groups like LRTA, MAGIC, MAPC, and a whole host of other ones. The second page of the document actually has a more detailed scope in terms of what exactly comes under the purview of something that TAC might discuss, and public transportation is a big part of that. Local roadway problems, anything related to safety, to access, to design, things of that kind, traffic calming, bike and pedestrian access and safety, sidewalk construction, repair, maintaining a priority list, specifically evaluating sidewalk locations based on established criteria. So just to give some background, there is an Excel spreadsheet that TAC maintains, which lists all the locations where sidewalks have been requested. There have been criteria to evaluate these and rank them and so on. We've heard about a lot of people from Stow Street, for example, talk about it. It is true. There is a log in that sheet about who has asked for these sidewalks, when, and so on. Stow Street does go back decades, but there are other locations also that have gone back a fair amount of time. So we've taken this very seriously over the last several years. We've decided to revamp the sheet, make it more modern, make it more data-driven, things where we can collect the data easily. And in the last few months, we've had members actually do a lot of legwork in trying to figure out all these data points and put them in and rank them and so on. So we just want to make sure that, and the engineering department uses it actively. They use it as a way of figuring out where's the next location where they should be focusing their efforts on. And they have this constant pipeline of locations to work on. So that's always been our understanding, but it would be good for the select board to review this charge, make sure that it's still valid, just so that we get some confirmation that what we're doing is not wasted or duplicated or anything of that kind. So that's the basic premise from the charge. If we can go on to the next slide. So we have some requests from the select board today. One, of course, is to review this document. It's about 6 years old now, and see if it needs to be edited in some form. But just, I think it's been, like Chris said, it's been a while, so it's good to take a look at it, review it, and make sure that we're all reinforcing what we are supposed to be doing. It's good to also get some actionable directions from the committee. I have been on TAC for about 4 years now. And this is probably the first time I'm sitting in front of the select board talking to you all. So I think that hopefully should change. I think we should have some regularity to meeting with our committee and potentially other committees as well. We're not asking for anything too much, maybe twice or thrice a year. Just come in front of you, bring the big issues here, and if we have anything that needs to be clarified in terms of priorities, we can thrash that out. transportation goals, we always push for it in the goal-setting agenda, but I think it's a high time we actually increase the priority on that because we have no progress on anything transportation-related in this town as far as we could tell. Partly because the goals are, they're well-intentioned, but I know that there are budget constraints and so on, but there is no way for us to measure our progress against any tangible goals that can be measured and progressed in some meaningful fashion. So that's what we wanted to bring here, a little more communication, a little more priority on these issues. Clearly, people are interested in all of this. If you attend transportation, the committee meetings, you will see the level of engagement we've had, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. So residents are keen to move things forward. I know there are practical constraints, but I think we need to somehow make it progress. So that's our pitch. We just wanted to bring this in front of the select board for your consideration.
Right, obviously we don't need any immediate feedback today, but just putting it out there that if you could, review the 2020 charge, edit if you feel it's necessary, and we can work with you through Pam to start going the right direction. Keep going the right direction.
Yes. Thank you both. Before we say anything, Pam, do you want to add anything to this discussion?
So, excuse me, I've had I've had the opportunity to attend one TAC meeting at this point, and have had several conversations with Rama and with Chris. And I think that where this, just to be very clear, kind of where this issue first came up is that it's my understanding that the TAC members have been putting a lot of energy into sidewalk prioritization. That there's been a lot of work, as you said, working on lots of data points, a lot of work that's been put into that. And I think there was a question of, how does that mesh with the Complete Streets projects, and looking for a little bit of guidance on that. And in the course of that, I know I had asked for a copy of the charge, and that's when, we uncovered the 2020 charge to the committee, and in looking at it and recognizing, as Chris was saying, there's a lot of other transportation items on that the committee is saying, yeah, now we're ready to really dig into some of these other pieces that are on this as well.
So just to clarify on that, public transportation has always been a big focus of TAC as well. So we keep looking at, Chris is one of our van drivers as well. So we have inside information, but we also have Laura chime in, give us ridership data on the different transportation options and so on. So we keep tracking that and try to see. I know it's a practical issue, finding drivers and keeping these services on, but there have been other efforts recently to try to revamp them, add some new service and tweak them and so on. So that's also always been, that and sidewalks, I think, have been the two big topics that we have. And I think somewhat recently, going back to Pam's comments, there was some communication with the town in terms of why are we doing sidewalk ranking if there is complete streets? And that's what triggered a big discussion for us, because for us it's very clear, complete streets and sidewalks are not the same thing. Complete streets, as you've seen, Stow Street is a major problem. It's a big facility, it's high volume and so on, but complete streets will not cover every single location in the town that can potentially benefit from sidewalks. So they need to talk to each other, but they are a little separate as well. So it's not one or the other, it has to be a combined collaborative effort.
All right, thank you so much for coming in, for sharing these this information and also your questions and requests. I just want to start off by sharing that when I very first became a committee member, it was at my swearing in at the clerk's office where the clerk told me, make sure you get
a copy of the charge from your committee chair. So that was, my introduction was through the town clerk, and who knows what the experience of other committee and board volunteers are. Later on our consent agenda, we have approval of a volunteer board and committee member survey that, that kind of information is what we're trying to collect. Like, how many people out there are having an experience similar to yours where you didn't actually, you weren't actually made aware of the charge when you joined the committee. So definitely fill that out when you see it coming to your inbox. I have a couple of other comments I wanted to make and questions, and then I'll open it up to other board members. Through the liaison, we have, which was Jim, before Pam joined us, we've heard actually a lot of input because Jim has reported to the board, oh yes, TAC discussed this project and here's the feedback. The one that I remember most clearly is the feedback that was provided by TAC when you discussed the state's proposed roundabout at the Route 2 exit. So I know that communication is happening, and you may not if you're not listening to those particular board meetings where the liaison is sharing, but that is an avenue of communication. Also, I've seen TAC members at some of these public workshops or at the tabling events that our engineering consultants do. So I'm very aware that communication is happening and you're providing input into a lot of different projects in town. I was going to ask if it would be helpful to have Laura come in and present all of the advances that she's made since taking over transportation, but it sounds like she already has been
She regularly
reporting.
attends our meetings, or at least provides us
That's
monthly
Yeah, she attends
spreadsheet
occasionally.
updates.
Okay, so I don't need to ask that, but I do want to ask, is a member of TAC a member of the traffic calming working group, whatever the name is?
So
No, okay.
we reviewed TAC. Ironically, TAC reviewed the draft traffic calming policy and provided guidance on that. And once it was adopted, there was a summary of that process at a TAC meeting. And we had actually asked that somebody from TAC should be involved in that process, just so that we are aware of the locations that people are requesting this, or if the engineering department is going to proceed with something. I mean, typically they do. Engineering department does come to us and present on a fairly regular basis, but it should be a formal membership. There should be somebody from TAC involved in that process.
Okay, now, you're jogging my memory that we did have that conversation with Jim when we were creating the traffic calming policy. And I think that the working group is all internal staff? Yeah, so Evan's saying, yeah. So, thank you. I'm glad you're getting updated on those requests that are coming in. Any other comments from other board members? David?
Hi, thank you, and thank you for coming here today to raise these issues. Just as a bit of general background, usually, maybe I don't know if it's quite usual, but very often, committee members will make requests to change their charge. So if there are things that you think should be different, I would work with Pam on those, and then Pam would bring forward a proposed change to your charge to the board. So if there's something, that you feel particularly either concerned about or want to advocate for or whatever, to bring those things forward. And I would say at any time where, I'm not speaking for this chair or any, but most committees, if they would like to have, bring up something to the select board, almost all chairs would say, work with you to schedule a time to do that. So, if there's an issue that you think is important to bring forward, no matter who's in office, probably that's possible. One of the things that I think about, and I think you guys touched on it, is, I'm not sure how it exactly would work, and how it relates to the traffic calming policy. But I think there's some role here to work with people from neighborhoods to work out what should be done in that neighborhood, right? Helping the neighbors understand the possibilities and, what the realities are in the, for long and short-term action. And then, make a recommendation as to what's appropriate, for those things. Whether that means, exactly what the details of that are, and exactly the relationships that are established to do that, I'm not sure. But it seems to me that, you heard some of that tonight, although I'd say that the Stow neighborhood is pretty well informed because they've been working on this for a while. But I think a lot of neighborhoods are not so well informed as to what's possible and what they should do, could do, et cetera. And I think there are possibilities there. Maybe short-term work, short-term work kind of can preempt long-term work. And so that's a really tough call in some cases. But maybe, things like changing traffic orders come up to the select board, right? So, but even those usually require, DPW work to do, right? Even if, even something as simple as putting in a stop sign, you would think it is trivial, but it's not trivial. Right, so those things. And I just wanted to be clear that, you guys both, or Rama, you maybe more alluded to the funding as being the issue, both for ongoing transportation, like public transportation, and for capital-based transportation, like a new sidewalk or an intersection improvement and things like that. We rely on grants heavily to do that, and it's really difficult to predict progress because it's hard to predict money, right? The money is passed next year by town meeting, or we get a grant to do something. And so I just wanted to be clear that what we kind of do, what DPW does, is to have a small queue or cache of shovel-ready projects that they can be ready when a grant opportunity comes up. And those are taken in the order that the grants are available, right? They're not always taken in terms of what might be the most important. There's a particular grant works for a particular project, and yeah, let's do it, right? And even if it's the third or eighth or 13th project that we would do if we had, just doing them in money order. So I just wanted to say that we're not always ignoring, any prioritization and stuff. It's really, really money dependent.
Absolutely, we agree. So I just want to respond to that briefly. So we are clearly aware of that. And one of the roles that the sidewalk ranking list serves is exactly that, that the department, DPW has a list of locations that they can hit one after the other. And at least it's based on some objective criteria and saying, okay, we can't do this one, we can do this one, but it's second on the list. So at least it's high priority enough that we can hit it. So we feel that the sidewalk ranking is a useful exercise for everyone concerned. Another aspect about the grants, I know this has been, we've been a little frustrated about it for several years in the sense that we think we should be going after more grants. And I know there needs to be staff that are willing to work on it and so on. And in the past, multiple times, we have offered our time to help write some of them. So we'll make that offer again. Anytime you need help going after the grants, writing drafts and so on, we're all available to help. The third point I wanted to make was we absolutely agree that short-term solutions should be looked at. But we've also had examples where we have proposed a lot of short-term solutions and they haven't moved either. One example is High Street, where we identified 4 key issues that people with visual impairments were actually facing walking down High Street to access the train lines and so on. And ironically, that action gets tied to complete streets because it's right at the intersection of Main Street and there is a Main Street complete streets in the works. So everything gets shelved because of that. And that's a never-ending it's like an indefinite postponement because we never know when the main street, complete streets will ever see light of day. But something as simple as putting down tactile feedback across the wide driveway outside the Erickson Grain Company will help people who are trying to navigate that stretch with a cane to not walk into the intersection space and become a risk of getting hit by traffic. I actually did a walk down from Faulkner Street all the way down to Main Street with a visually impaired resident on Faulkner leading the way. And we actually identified a critical issue there that even he wasn't aware of. Very close to the grain company, there's a sheer drop off at the right of the right side, not the left, the right, at the property boundary. You take one wrong foot and you're down 10 feet down on stones at the bottom. And he wasn't even aware of that. This is an issue with visually impaired people. There's an issue with kids riding bicycles there. Whatever it is, one little slip and you're down 10 feet. And we initiated a discussion with the town. It turned out whoever was developing that property was supposed to put a barrier there, did not. And then there was this process of trying to figure out how to fix this, but it hasn't been fixed yet. It's been more than a year. So these are small things that can change. Some things did change. I think the town did put an audio signal for the crosswalk at High Street and Main. That happened, so I'm happy for that. But out of the 4 issues we raised, only one, I think, got addressed, and maybe the crosswalk at Faulkner is there now. That's there, yeah. So putting the tactile strip can be done now. If it has to be redone when the complete streets happens, I think that's a small price to pay because I think the tactile strip is a very cheap option, but it will create immediate impact for those people who are trying to access the train line. So that's what I wanted to say. We need more communication. We know that these things, complete streets, etc., are long-term projects, but there are a lot of short-term projects that need to be done. We heard from Stow Street residents. They want to see short-term solutions take effect. I spoke a little earlier. The reason I brought it up was because we've had these meetings where engineering has come forward, Stow residents have come forward, and we were discussing what we could do in the short term for Stow Street. And there was some discussion about trying a pilot program with a one-way street and so on. I was trying to raise that, but it looks like nothing happened. So I think there needs to be a focus on the short-term solutions while we look at the bigger picture that takes longer and needs more money.
I do, that's where I heard it was at a TAC meeting where Director York said we could try out the one-way. And I think what happened is not nothing. What happened was this complete streets project that we've just been presented. That's what happened as part of that. And the one-way is one of those options. One thing that I would suggest, just to your point of improving communications, is when you identify those small fixes that are inexpensive, if the committee has come to a determination with a vote that this is what we see as a solution that might be temporary, that might be permanent, that's a small thing that would make a very large impact, it would be great, either to have the liaison bring it to the board, but, that's during a member minute, we can't really discuss it.
Right.
So it would be great if you're sending that suggestion to Public Works staff, to the town engineer, CC the select board, just so that we stay in the loop of these little things, and then we can track them. We can, ask management, hey, did that ever get done? And I completely understand your frustration with the distinction between the sidewalk prioritization plan and the complete streets efforts that the town has been engaged in. I'm glad David brought up the point that we're trying to get these projects to a state where they're shovel ready when grant funding comes in. But there are other projects that we're able to do as the town with town staff. The Taylor Road sidewalk, the Willow Street sidewalk, the things that they did at the intersections along High Street with, I think some of it was tactile and some of it was crosswalks. So we're doing our best. But we really appreciate both of you coming in. And are there any other comments or questions from the board? David, I'm so sorry. I think you guys need to switch seats.
Thank you, and thanks for coming in. At one time there was a totally independent sidewalk committee, separate from Transportation Advisory, and at some point they got merged. So I guess one of the things I'd challenge you folks with is, when you start thinking about maybe wanting to change your charge, is was that the right decision to make? Eliminating the independent, the sidewalk committee was strictly dealing with sidewalk issues. Has combining those duties with looking at things like public transportation, has that diluted the focus? So I don't know whether it has or it hasn't, but I think that's something that internally you folks might want to think about and see if, we create and we dissolve committees with some frequency around here, so we're always trying to find the right fix. And it's a combination, obviously, of the personalities of the volunteers who are available to us. It's a function of, specifically for transportation, who have we got in DPW that's focused on this? So there's a lot of different factors, but that might be something you might want to think about. I think, obviously, we'd love to get huge grants as we do from time to time, and right now they seem to all be tied into complete streets projects. But I think there's some other projects, some of the quick fixes that you've spoken about. I think the question is there sufficient funding in the town's operating budget from year to year to do those quick fixes or not? That's probably a discussion that you folks should have with the Public Works Director and the town manager. It seems like town meeting is a long way away from us right now when we go for appropriation, but it's really not.
Right.
I know when I was working here full-time, this is about when we start, from a department point of view, we start pulling together our ideas for budget for next year. So I think look at, is there sufficient funding traditionally for the small projects that we're talking about? Is there a way that that funding source can be increased, which is basically taxes, which means you end up having to fight with somebody else that's got something they want? And I think looking at the dollars and cents early on, and feeding that information to Public Works and to the town manager in the time period of mid-September, I think is when you want to start hitting it up. And it's like, if we're not providing enough money for those small projects that you've talked about year after year, then maybe that's something that we should focus on.
Right.
So I would encourage you to, ponder a bunch of those things over the summer, and I look forward to seeing a hit list come in. Maybe the town manager doesn't look forward to it, but I'll look forward to it. Thank you.
So I think you wanted to say something perhaps, but I'll just mention that so far we have been communicating directly with town manager. It's only recently we realized that we should probably be coming to the select board first before doing that. So we were assuming that, someone recommended to us that we take his town manager's permission for certain things. For example, getting DPW involved in TAC meetings and so on. And he was very responsive to that, saying, yes, this should happen and so on. So I think we continued with that mode of communication. But Jim's been great in bringing our issues in front of select board, I think. But it's just many items have not moved. That's basically the reality of it. And we know why. We know what the challenges are. Did you want to say anything else?
Well, I was just, when Dean was talking about the sidewalk committee being finished up, they did finish, sort of a work parcel, I guess to put it. They put together a design guide that's, I think, something like 22 pages, and they'd come up with, their process for prioritizing sidewalks, and it was pretty complex, and they'd gone through and gathered the data, and they came up with the prioritization list. So, we probably should think about it again, but I think they did a lot of work that means that it's less work now continue tracking sidewalks. We don't have to build that design guidebook, for instance.
Design guidebook, but what we did see was the sidewalk committee was shut down in 2018, and its purview was rolled into TAC towards the end of 2018. So what we inherited from them was the ranking criteria and the ranking list that they had maintained until that point. What we've seen in the years since then is that those ranking criteria probably can be better. And a lot of the stuff, the criteria that went into it are difficult to measure and oftentimes are very qualitative in nature. So what we have tried to do the last 2 years is to make it more measurable, objective stuff. We can go to the town GIS website and look at the map and say, okay, this is what we have going around 2 miles around this street. Somebody sitting at home can do this and put it into the sheet, as opposed to sending someone out into the field with a measuring tape and trying to figure things out, right? So, and sometimes it's been a while since they worked on it too, so a lot of things have changed. And I think the rankings need to be also revisited because like people like Stow Street, they've been on this ranking list for 30 plus years. And the ground reality has changed for them. A lot of that neighborhood has changed. There is a lot more traffic there, a lot more heavy traffic going on. There's a lot more playground stuff and things like that, which didn't even exist when they were initially ranked. So it is time to revamp all of this, take another look, and see if we can keep it going, because DPW definitely uses it. We used to get quarterly updates from them as to how sidewalks are improving, which places have been finished, which places are still half there, and so on. So I think it's an important service. We just want to make sure that we still have the backing of the select board to continue doing that work.
Thank you. I think that what I've heard tonight is that if there are items in the charge, aspects of the charge that you think would be good to edit, bring that through Pam to the board. I'm gonna maybe edit what Dean suggested of, your, what little fixes need funding, bring that to the Public Works Director or the Town Manager. He's not here to weigh in on that suggestion, but my sense is that the Transportation Advisory Committee is an advisory committee to the Select Board. Right. So I think, he's on our email shell, so if you send it to the Select Board, he'll get it, certainly, and choose whether or not to share with the Public Works staff. And yes, I think that might be the two biggest things that I was going to suggest. But before we move on to the next item, are there folks that are online or in the room who wanted to share public comment?
You do have one person online.
Okay, great.
That is Colin User 2. We can hear you. Nope, you just muted. We cannot hear you.
Hi, it's Tara again. I had to hang up. So I just want to say I'm really super excited to see the new energy with the TAC, and particular for sidewalks, and point out that the two committees, if I remember correctly, were merged not because of any mission change. It was because of lack of quorum. So if you have the people, I would recommend separating them again. It's also, I want to make the point that there's a difference between permission to use staff resources and gaining the political momentum to direct staff resources. So yes, go through town manager to access staff resources. But when it comes to prioritizing, or if you're not getting the staff support, I say come back to the select board. That's where the power is. I like the idea of more measurable, because that's how we got sidewalks on Route 2A. We're trying for the number of residents per square mile and then the mile of sidewalk. So that's something I hope you measure, especially when you look at places where, like on Martin Street, you've basically doubled the size of a neighborhood with 30 new homes or whatever. You can get the developer to give you money. I know that yes, there's a requirement or whatever to do that, but you can get more if the project requires select board approval. I also want to, just briefly, if I have another minute or two, the democratizing. I want to remind people that last century, There was one person at town hall that decided where the sidewalks went, and if you knew him and you were friends, you got your sidewalk, okay? Then that changed to like a bunch of people that would kind of lobby him and all that stuff, okay? I feel like we're going back to that with this, what do we call, traffic calming working group? That's a secret meeting. They carefully choose people so that they don't make a quorum of officials, and then they make decisions, which are really hard to unravel, folks. I do not like that at all. I love the idea of using those ranking sheets and democratizing, making sure that we do more to spread democracy, not less. It's maybe efficient to have these secret meetings, but frankly, I don't like it. I love the rankings. I love the openness. I love the energy, and I thank you so much for caring about sidewalks. Thanks so much. Bye.
So I'll just make one comment in response to that. So this is one of the points that was raised was looking at the number of people who live around sidewalks. This is the type of analysis we are doing right now. We're looking at the GIS map that the town has, and we see if there's a certain street that we're trying to evaluate, we go in there and draw a buffer around to see how many people live there. If you build the sidewalk, how many people are going to benefit from that? Can they walk to something reasonable like a shopping complex or a school or some such thing? So these are the type of measurable metrics we're trying to bring into the sheet, which were missing from the original ranking system.
All right, thanks. There are couple others online?
We do have one other person who raised their hand. MK, you're now unmuted.
Yes, just to add one more comment about the sidewalk committee, because I am one of the people that have been trying to get a sidewalk for over 30 years. We were third on the list as far as the police station or the public works when I first moved here. Years later, when the sidewalk committee was formed, it was really just a partisan group of insiders who wanted sidewalks for their neighborhoods. And they actually took Stow Street off the list, even when their list to determine who needs a sidewalk. They would say that we didn't qualify for many, many things we did qualify for just because they wanted their neighborhoods to have sidewalks before ours. The head of the sidewalk committee was really partisan. She really just wanted sidewalks in her neighborhood, and she chose and picked her friends. So even though they did have a list, it was not accurate, and they took us off the list completely and then put us back on when we complained. So I'm not quite sure the sidewalk committee formed with a group of citizens will help, because it ends up being pretty much just the people who want sidewalks in their area. So that's it. Thank you for taking all of our questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I did hear that angle brought up at one of the TAC meetings, and it surprised me. It's no longer the case. I keep telling people it's no longer the case. That's not how we operate. And the sidewalk list is on the DocuShare. It is publicly available for people to look at. And this is the transparency we want to bring here. A measurable metric that is out there, people can take a look, and if they want to challenge it, they can. If you make a mistake, we fix it, and that's it.
Yeah, I think we don't need to focus backwards. Let's focus forwards on what your work is now, how you are standardizing the criteria. The traffic calming policy was meant to do the same. Let's make it standardized. Let's make it transparent. We have a proper procedure now. The complete streets, there's incredible outreach that happens with those public forums and surveys, tabling out in the community. So I think we are on a good path now, and we can just leave the past behind us. And I would, if it's quick, Fran, go ahead, but I would really like to get to our remaining 4 items.
Believe me, so would I. But I just want to clarify that I don't think the complete streets is anything clandestine. I think sidewalks serve a purpose in a certain area. I think these pedestrian, bike paths and walkways would be great in a Stow Road area connected to the Bruce Freeman. So I think there is a place for each of them, but not always the same place.
We really appreciate you coming in. We have a lot of other business to do, so please stay in touch with us through your liaison, and also just send us an email directly.
Thanks.
I know this was supposed to be a 5-minute presentation. Thank you for taking the time.
Appreciate you being here. All right, so our next item is to discuss the next steps for municipal wastewater governance study by the Collins Center from 2025. Speaking of the past. Do you have anything prepared, or do you want me to just read the recommendation? That's how the discussion started last June. The town manager read the recommendation from the report, and then we talked about where we go from here. But we have a new member now.
Yes, so it is up to you. I have a document that was shared earlier today that is from that meeting that has the recommendations for the wastewater commission responsibilities as well as wastewater commission structure. I can put it up on the screen and you could run through it, I can run through it, however you'd
Let's
like to.
wait on that, just to make sure that we're all reminded of where we landed at the end of our discussion last June. And then we'll put that up, because that was the next step. All right, so the Collins Center conducted a study of our wastewater, or specifically sewer governance in the town, and their recommendation was that the town should establish, through a bylaw, a wastewater commission that develops policies and budgets within the framework of town government while reserving certain decision-making for the select board upon the commission's recommendation. And for anybody who doesn't already know, the select board is currently acting as the sewer commissioners. The project team determined that the wastewater governance model, which would best align with the values and goals of the town, would be the establishment of a separate independent board with limited autonomy, which also advises the select board on wastewater issues. Key roles that should be retained by the select board should include setting of rates and fees, authorization for borrowing, authorization for land takings and easements, and endorsement of plans for major system expansion. So the board's discussion following our review of that report focused on those tasks, but in addition, many others. And we gave direction to David to create a list of which tasks would stay with the select board, which would be with an independent wastewater commission that would be appointed by the select board. And then beyond that, there are additional considerations like the number of people writing the charge, what their expertise, qualifications would be, et cetera. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Pam, and find out if you have any burning questions, concerns, questions, suggestions. I don't know if you reviewed the minutes or watched the meeting last year, a whole 12 months ago.
Well, I read the report that was in the packet. So I was going from what was in the report. And no, I did not. I thought this was a discussion on the report. So, we can do that. Well, but it sounds like there have been a number. So one of my questions, certainly, there was a strong recommendation from the report. Throughout the report, it talked about the strong benefits of having technical expertise and whatever system that you do. There were sort of two options: an independent commission, which was the recommendation, but also an advisory group that would have that technical expertise. And I assume that you all talked about the benefits of both of those. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
Do you have any questions or thoughts on the?
Well, I was just curious, looking at both of as I thought, what the rationale was for going with, setting up a separate commission rather than going the advisory board route.
I'm not sure I can
answer that. Well, number one, it was the recommendation of the report after they completed this pretty thorough study. They interviewed officials, staff, members of the water district staff, as well as commission, folks at the wastewater treatment plant, forgetting the entire list of people. They also did a literature review. They also studied other towns and that were similar, and you saw that in the report. So there was some concern expressed by board members about having the commission. Well, it wasn't really a concern expressed, but we talked about having the commission be appointed or elected. And I think that we concluded that the Collins Center had recommended that this be an appointed board because it's a very small segment of the population that is sewered. It's only 10%, as opposed to Concord, which is 35%. And then they have, actually, I don't even know if their Public Works Commission is elected or appointed, but that was part of it. The preference for this independent commission versus an advisory committee, in my mind, and other folks can add into this, is that an independent commission would be making a lot of decisions and holding a lot of meetings to increase engagement with the public, grapple with different questions that the select board does not have the time on our agenda because we have such a broad scope and full agendas. So they could be making decisions, waiving fees, and making decisions on minor expansions independent of us if they had that autonomy. So it would be taking lots of work off of the select board's plate, but we would retain, approving the budget. Ultimately, town meeting approves the budget, and other decisions like a major expansion or changing the funding structure, how sewer is funded. And in that sense, the commission would act as an advisory committee. So there would be some things that they would be recommending and some things that they would be responsible for. So I think maybe it is appropriate at this point, unless there's something else you want to add before we look at David's list. So we have to come to an agreement about creating this commission, which tasks this commission would be responsible for and which tasks would stay with this board. So we sent David off to create a list based on the report and based on our discussion last year. And I also see that he has added some details about the charge and the makeup of the committee.
So they were always there in our meeting in October. So this is I made a really minor formatting change. I didn't change any content at all today. So
Tom, can you share that?
Can I make two quick points? One was this intermediate kind of bullet-oriented list is a half step to get to text, right? So we didn't have to review a draft of text. We would use a bulleted list or a line item list to decide on the parameters, and then someone would develop text. And the second thing is, depending on the amount of autonomy given the Wastewater Commission, it needs a bylaw, probably, right? So if it's not advisory if it does too much, right? So, or can do too much. But we also could take an intermediate step and have, a committee like TAC, for example, that can take some steps, and then if that's working, make it into an autonomous thing. We have a lot of freedom as to how we implement this. Do you want me to just explain what the 2 pages are?
Yeah, so I would just, before you explain this, I would just say that my preference would be to have not an intermediary advisory committee, but to go with the Collins Center recommendation to create a commission and take enabling legislation to the town meeting. Go ahead.
The first thing, the recommended items here are the recommend items. They would recommend to the select board to take an action. They would not be authorized to take that action themselves. And the responsible list, and the responsible list, and I can send you this document, or we can put the document in the packet afterward, is the things that they would be authorized to do on their own without any select board approval. So the main division here between the things that they would recommend, they're mostly associated with money. And the things that they were responsible for are mostly associated with the technical day-to-day operation of the facility. And so, Tom, you could scroll down and just show the bottom of the responsibles. So for example, the waive fees when deemed necessary. We actually discussed that at one meeting, which even though that's a little bit money oriented, that's there. So sometimes we have waived fees for new subscribers to the district if they have low income housing, for example. And we could decide to take that, in one list or another. If, this list was a draft list, this is not any final list. This was based on the discussion that we had at the final meeting where we actually discussed this. And then, Tom, if you could just go to the next page. And then this was a list of just general, the structure of the commission body. And this would be turned in, if whatever we agree on here, if we want to delete an item from this list or add an item or change an item, and then we have this list and the list above, that would be translated into a bylaw, into text for a bylaw that we'd bring to town meeting.
Dean.
It's all coming back to me now. Yeah, I think if we go back to the first page, I'm pretty comfortable with the list, except I agree with David. I think he was pointing in this direction. Under the last item, waive fees when deemed necessary. I really think that is something that should be still held by the select board. I know anytime, for instance, when folks come in looking for a waiver of any kind of a fee, building permit fee or whatever, it's always something that's the responsibility of the select board. So I feel comfortable in recommending the list that David's put together with that one change. I think going to the second page, when we talk about the makeup of the board, yeah, I think a 5-member board makes a lot of sense. I think it's very important that we have people with technical expertise. How you're going to recruit those folks is something else entirely, but would be a challenge. But I think so long as we've got a clear expectation set up, it might be somewhat easier to attract folks that would be interested in it. But, I think it's been obvious to me anyway for the last 7 years or so that having the select board be in charge of sewer rate setting and everything else to do with sewers, it's not something that most of us have any expertise or comfort with. So I think it's really important that we get some folks that can focus on these things.
Fran?
And I completely agree with Dean on the list. And I think the committee makeup looks great.
David?
Yeah, I'm not arguing with this. I would be completely fine with moving the waves fees up to the recommended section. I just will say that from the board's discussion last year, some members of the board were concerned, and the reason I put it this way, about a potential political situation that would disadvantage the people in the sewer district. Right, so we might politically give away the fees, which would indirectly increase the rates for people in the district. I'm not again, arguing with that, I'm just explaining what we discussed last year. And an additional thing that we might want to discuss is what is the connection to the select board? Is a member of the select board a member of this? Presumably, we'd have at least a liaison. We have a liaison to everything else. But should a member of the select board be a member here? And how does that, basically that's the decision. It is a liaison or a member. Because obviously the two bodies have to be well coordinated because we have these financial issues and we have the operational issues. And they're never completely separate, right? Even if you think them purely operationally, there's, you spend money to do the maintenance, upgrades, whatever. And so we need to, that's an area that's not covered by this currently, and we didn't discuss that really last year, that I remember.
So I will say that I'm certain I was one of the people who felt that an independent commission would be responsible for waiving fees, whether they are privilege, well, I guess they would be for privilege fees regardless. And for some reason, I cannot remember which projects. I know it was McManus Manor, but there was a second project. It may have been Parker Street? Yes. Parker Street, that actually was part of the impetus for me to bring the citizens petition to town meeting to ask town meeting to look at this governance and see if there was a better way of managing everything that was related to sewer. I like how it's focused on wastewater and not only sewer, though, if we create a wastewater commission. That being said, there was a meeting at which the sewer commissioners, and I believe it was in 2022, waived almost $2 million in privilege fees for McManus Manor and I guess it was Parker Street. So that spoke to me of a conflict between the select board's overarching affordable housing goals and responsibility to the ratepayers. And I learned through my development of the citizens petition that the water district commissioners do not waive fees because their responsibility is to the ratepayers. Now, granted, the water district services 95% of the town, whereas the sewer district is only about 10% of the town. But I feel strongly that it should stay with an independent commission that waive fees. Also, it makes sense because you have, in this list, David, the approval of policies, rules, and regulations as a responsibility of the commission. The only item that I'm not sure, I guess I'm not sure what it means, and I'm not sure, I think it should be a responsibility of the commission rather than the select board, is coordinating with the water district and RAC. I'm absolutely not opposed to collaboration and communication between those entities. I just don't know what coordination means, especially given that RAC is an advisory committee to the select board. And your suggestion to have a select board member be a voting member or a liaison, I don't think I have a strong preference one way or another. I think either would be fine. There would still potentially be that tension between a select board member being a voting member of the Independent Wastewater Commission. Would that person, if they were a voting member, be voting in their capacity as a member of an Independent Wastewater Commission or in their capacity as a select board member? So that's similar to the way RAC is set up right now, is we have a member from the water district who is a voting member of RAC, but there are a couple of other people who are associated with the water district, but there's only one representative from the water district. So only that individual member, and that's Corey Godfrey, can speak for the water district, even though there's a commissioner and a finance committee member, and now the clerk of the water district serve on RAC. So I just said that I would be okay either way, but it sounds like I've just convinced myself that I think that the select board should have a liaison assignment to an independent commission, because the aim is for this commission to be independent, in my estimation, and to be able to establish policies and make decisions that maybe the select board would not tend to make. There's also a mention in the report about how sometimes elected folks who are serving on these commissions, making these decisions, might not set rates high enough. Because might set rates not high enough because they're concerned about the political outfall of that. And so that's another consideration. But, in this list, you are keeping sewer rate setting with the select board, which is the elected body. I just don't want to set us up for a situation where we would undercharge. Like we need to have the sewer rate set at a level that continues to enable the operation and also maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant. I think that what the independent commission can help with is not only having more engagement with the public, but also with the staff in public works, as well as our consultant that's operating the wastewater treatment plant. But beyond that, looking at necessary work that needs to be done on the infiltration and inflow issue that we have, the issue with limited discharge capacity, not being, there's not enough remaining discharge capacity at the wastewater treatment plant for some of the properties in the district to hook up when they need to, when their septics fail. I'm not sure whether or not our new equalization tank will support that. As well as, we keep, and this was mentioned in our discussion last time, that each time a sewer expansion vote has failed at town meeting, the board has discussed reconsidering how we fund sewer in the town, and finding a better way than having only bettered properties bear the cost of that. And that's something that it doesn't seem that the select board has time to work on. So it may be that we don't need to spell that out here, or maybe you have. I mean, you have talked about expansion, but have you talked about the funding structure of such?
Sorry, it's the fourth item down on the screen.
Funding models for okay, so it is there, great.
So that's a recommend.
Yeah.
So that's still the select board's responsibility. So, so a few of your things, that last thing with the waived fees, I could deal with it either way myself. But if it got, as Fran and Dean have said, move that up to the recommended, that still means that it would, the independent commission would deal with it, make a specific recommendation to the board. So in some ways, that would be good. It would get two eyes on it. And, you know, I think the select board would be loath to change the recommendation of the sewer commission unless we had a strong reason to do so, right? You know, I think it would be 80, 90%, maybe, you know, that we would take the recommendation of the commission. Now, we do that with a lot of even just advisory committees, and this is a stronger, yeah.
So how would that be seen by the person or entity that's coming to a board to request a fee waiver? So you're telling me I'm the Acton Housing Authority and I'm building this project, so now I need to go to this independent wastewater commission and present my request for a fee waiver, and then they're going to take the recommendation to the select board who will ultimately approve it? That seems extra lengthy and extra anxiety fraught to me.
Yes, and I agree with that point, but I would also say that the fee waivers, and this is something I think Dean was alluding to, are often policy-related things for the town, right? And having this, that's where the select board comes into play, right? If I were the commission, I would say, I'm never waiving fees. I need the money to be able to do everything. But the town may have other motivations, and that's where the select board comes in. We have to decide where to put that.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you again. We don't have a policy to waive fees whenever they're requested for affordable housing. We just have a practice, or we have a past practice. I haven't been on the board where that vote has come before the sewer commission. And similar to, you know, the building permit fees and the inspection fees that we have been asked to waive, we don't have a policy on that. We just hear from the applicant and we discuss it and we make a decision. So I'm not seeing that this is an issue, especially where you have approval of wastewater policies, rules, and regulations as a responsibility of the commission.
No, I'm not saying that this is a policy. In fact, just the opposite. I'm saying that this is a case-by-case basis, right? The town may have other motivations, right? This commission may want the money to maintain the system, and that makes perfect sense. But the town may want to expand affordable housing, right? And that's a different motivation. You know, and we have to decide what bucket to put that in, right? And you're right, in the past, we've just had conventions. Of course, they could be made into policies, but we've just had conventions. I also don't have a strong thing as to whether a select board member should be a voting member or not. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to both ways. And I'm forgetting your other point, but those were my main things.
Just on the issue of whether a select board member should be a voting or non-voting member, of the four, I believe it was, towns that were presented in the report, the only one where it was, I think, talked about is that Orleans has the select board as a liaison. I don't believe any of the others had sort of a voting member or even a liaison role, or at least it wasn't mentioned.
I don't want to lead us astray. Do we have any committees that we're members of?
Yes, we do. CPC, 250.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are others. I have to look at you to know what your name is. I'm going to look at you hard.
Okay.
Dean.
Yeah. So I strongly feel that if there's going to be a member of the select board on this commission, it should be in a liaison role only, not a voting member. I draw the parallel here with my liaison work with the Conservation Commission. You know, sit in the back, listen to it. If there are things that need to be brought to the attention of the select board, and the town manager, or if there's some way that I can facilitate things, I do so. But that's clearly with Conscom, because they're dealing with highly technical issues. And with this, presumably this committee is going to be dealing with highly technical issues. I think it's important that select board members stay in their lane. So I think liaison would be, I think that's desirable, but I don't think that they should be a voting member. And I feel uncomfortable saying this, but I agree with David once again. I think there are some broad policy issues that we've dealt with in the past, and, encouraging affordable housing. And yes, waiving fees for that is something that, that's been a goal through how many different studies and policies that the town has brought through, and this is a way that we do it. Now, if we have an independent commission who will recommend the waiving fees, they can recommend not to waive the fees, and they can make their presentation saying, we don't recommend this because we think it's going to create financial problems for the ratepayers. And that's a voice that, frankly, we haven't heard in the past. Usually when somebody, housing authority comes in, wants a fee waiver, we hear about why we should do this and why it supports one of our goals, but we haven't heard that other piece of the argument. So I think it's important that we have that. Frankly, I think having that under the recommended category makes the most sense. But I think it will, no matter what we do, if we establish this committee, they will have a voice and they will be able to bring those kind of concerns you brought forward that the ratepayers are not necessarily well represented in the decision-making process. So I think in either case, you're going to end up better than you are right now.
Fair enough. So David, my other question was about coordinating with Water District and RAC. I just don't know what that means.
I agree. You used the word communication, and that might be a better word there. You're right. I do think that there is the communication is important. Water rates are used for sewer rates, right? Water use and is used to discover I&I, right? And so there are other, communicate's fine. And if you don't object to that, I think that's better.
And then the other question I have is, Woodard and Curran has been our operating consultant for as long as I can remember, even though it's gone out to bid. No one else has put forth a bid to take that over. I remember in the report, it said specifically that, coordinating with the Public Works Director, this independent commission could decide on that, but you have contracts and agreements as a recommend. What kind of relationship do folks envision this commission having with Woodard and Curran? Are they getting quarterly reports from them, annual reports? No relationship? Because that would be an external contract, correct? Oversight of wastewater operations is in the responsible list. So does that mean?
Yes, and there's also something here about staff, but I thought, anyway.
Yeah. Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, you're touching on kind of a topic that I wanted to relay to you after discussing this with the town manager, and it pertains to external contracts and agreements. And this being in the recommended category is suitable because the town manager is chief procurement officer, is responsible and the signatory for all contracts, which this maintains that practice. One item that I would recommend considering changing to a recommend is authorization of new projects to proceed. As the chief procurement officer and town manager, the town manager typically signs notice to proceeds for any project, whether it's a design project or a construction project to move forward. And that is listed here as a responsibility of this committee or commission. I would recommend moving that to the recommended file.
That sounds good. And David, is oversight, both of those sound good, sorry, Tom. The oversight of wastewater operations, was that meant to cover our discussion of keep tabs on? Do you remember that?
Yes.
All the things that we would we would want this commission to keep tabs on with the operation of the plant.
Yes.
Okay.
And the one above that says coordination with town engineering staff on proposed changes and recommendations. I suppose we could also add a coordination with the contractor, but town staff is really the interface to the contractor. So anyway.
I like oversight. So it sounds to me like we're in agreement that a select board member should be a liaison rather than a voting member. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yep. And the only other potential disagreement is on waiving fees. And I hear what you are saying, Dean, where they would have a voice in our decision if we kept that. But how about we do a thumbs up for waiving fees is a responsibility of the commission? Thumbs up? Or thumbs down if you don't agree with that? So if you have thumbs up, you think that this independent wastewater commission should have the responsibility for waiving fees? Okay, everybody disagrees with me. I love it. Okay, so it sounds like we're moving that one from responsible. We are changing coordination with AWD and RAC to communication. We are moving authorization of new projects and external contracts and, oh, nope, that's already recommend.
Authorization.
Authorization of new projects to proceed is changing to recommendation.
Is everybody on board with that?
Yes. Tom, could you scroll down to the second page again, just to see if there's any other changes or additions we want to make to this?
Madam Chair, this might be a good spot where we could add in that we should have a select board member as liaison.
Sounds good. And is this going to be 3-year term? 5-year term? If we get some good folks, let's keep them for as long as we can.
Almost everything else is 3.
I'm just kidding. Sorry, I should not kid because people think I'm serious. Any other additions to this?
One.
Yep.
I'm not seeing it here. I thought early on you had said something about reporting, and should that be on this list as well?
Reporting from
From the commission
to the
to
select
the
board?
select board.
Yes.
This is kind of the charge. There isn't a
Yeah.
charge, there'll be a bylaw.
Definitely it would be, what you're saying about reporting, that would be included in whatever they're bringing to us as a recommendation. So if they're recommending that we waive this fee or we don't waive this fee, if they're recommending this expansion or not. And an expansion could be, to an entire neighborhood or, this section of Great Road, or it could be somebody has a house and they want to add an ADU that, they would need to increase because that's an increase to their betterment that they originally paid. Or somebody is developing like
Hawk Crest Ridge was 2 parcels put together for a subdivision. One of them was in the district, one of them was not, and so it was added. That's sort of a minor expansion. Yes, Pam?
No, I understand sort of as things are happening, there'll be communication, but I guess I was thinking more of like almost like an annual report.
Oh,
of
okay.
Here's what, has happened over the past year, just, as a way of making sure that, it's a way of just increasing that communication, and I think they're the ones to give us kind of that overall picture.
Maybe that could happen when the budget director presents the sewer rate recommendation, because they're going to weigh in on that. So could this commission provide an annual report in June when that annual rate setting happens, or would it be better at a different time of year?
I agree with Pam. I think if everybody agrees, I'll write it down, that we should ask them to produce an annual report on the state of the wastewater district. And that, to me, would include any upcoming changes that they think are needed, or expansions that are possible, or desired, things like that. That would be a report to the town. Of course, we would kind of be the prime audience, but a report to the town. And so I think maybe we should just talk for just a second about the rate setting. I presume that they would be the ones to say what the rate setting would be for the district. They would work with the budget director and they would make the decision. Because I think that's what we're saying. Right now, we make that decision. The budget director recommends to us, and so they would work with staff to understand what the pros and cons of rates are, and make a recommendation to change the rates.
But that's in the recommend, not the responsible section. Is
Right,
that
so-
right? Tom, sorry, can you go back up to the first page? Recommend, okay. So they might make that presentation. Maybe, so I agree that we should have them give us an annual report, but maybe not specify the time of the year. Maybe it happens in June when they're presenting the sewer rate setting, or maybe it happens at a different time of year. Because there might be something that needs, pressing reporting on.
Often those happen before town meeting.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I think we can just say annual.
Annual report.
But
So do you have enough information to go and expand this into a textual, I guess we really shouldn't call it a charge, it's going to be a bylaw.
That's correct.
And then also, I want to remind everybody that this is, it's a priority for the board, but it's in the long-term goal.
Yeah, so the plan last year was to do what we did now. We didn't get around to it last year. And then we had talked about me working with council to develop a bylaw. And if that makes sense, I can work with the town manager and town manager's office and council to produce a bylaw and bring it back.
Nice.
Does that make
sound
sense to
good?
you, Tom?
It does, yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. And we can move on to the next agenda item, which is oh, yes, go ahead.
So if I just echo back with the updated list that I've been taking notes on, where I think we made decisions, how should I do that? Should I include that in the next packet? Should I include it in the past packet? Maybe I should include it in the past packet, or the additional information section of the packet. I mean, it would be a public document in either case, but
Yeah, I think including it, because it's a summary of the discussion that we had today.
and I just want to make sure all you guys can then look at it once more and say, and before we get too far into it, to say, oh, that's not what I thought we decided.
Okay.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
So our next item is to approve memorandum of agreement for the use of Luther B. Conant School as a temporary location for Acton Town Hall.
We have mapped out or drafted a memorandum of agreement with the superintendent, and that has been adopted by the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District School Committee. And what I'm happy to highlight a couple different things before I show you the floor plan is that we mapped out an agreement that would give us occupancy for approximately 16 months. That would allow us to also move the transportation vans from NARA over to the back of Conant as well. We have mapped out snow removal operations where town will focus on certain areas and Acton-Boxborough School District will focus on other areas to make sure that it's clear for bus drivers who will still be located there, but also town staff and residents who will be visiting the relocated temporarily town hall. Utility expenses will be split between the two entities based off of a percentage of square footage occupancy, which is yet to be determined, or finalized, I should say. And what we've also agreed upon is any alterations to the building that'll accommodate town staff. We'll be working with Acton-Boxborough staff to make sure that those are appropriate, as well as the building commissioner. And Acton-Boxborough District has been kind enough to allow us usage of some of the furniture that's inside the building that they will not be taking, so that'll lessen some of the moving requirements and also expenses for the town for renting or relocating furniture. So what does that look like? And let me just bring up this floor plan. And it was in your packet, but I'd like to share this here with you, give you a little bit of an explanation. So if you can see, the yellow area is shaded, and that would be the town staff. So town offices and town hall, there's roughly 45 staff members who are located in this building full-time would relocate to these areas. The space for green would remain occupied by Acton-Boxborough School District. And one thing I did want to point out is you'll see the kitchen area is highlighted in green, which means the school district will maintain operations in that area. They'll be cooking food and then shipping that out to the schools throughout the district. So that's why they'll be utilizing that space inside of a sea of yellow in that area of the building. Some of the things that we're working through with town staff is a relocation plan and a footprint that would give residents easy access to town or to community-facing departments. So we're talking about the finance wing and the land use wing, and how do we incorporate that into the building while making services easy to find for residents and also enough room to be able to adequately provide services to the community. Some of the ideas include usage of the library and then usage of the, and I'm just going to move my cursor, 2 different school wings here. Some creative ideas that we've had is building some counters inside of this space that would act as greeting areas for staff and residents who visit, and then signage. Signage will be a big piece of this puzzle that we're working on to ensure that residents who are coming in have a full understanding of where they're going inside of the building. To separate Acton-Boxborough side from the town side, AB will be building temporary walls that'll stretch the hallways, prohibiting access from anybody who's entering in on the town side from accessing the side for the district. And they'll be utilizing a different entrance for kids who will be attending after-school programs as well, removing any concerns from both entities. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're still working on where each office would be located inside of this building. We do have a great working group internally that includes members of the land use wing, finance wing, IT, town manager's area, HR. So it's a good collection of different people who will be impacted by this move. We plan on meeting quite a few times over the next few months and finalizing plans, and then starting to look at how we really roll this out to the community and start to publicize where in the building you can find Service A or Service B. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, and I'm also happy to talk through the MOA if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions about the MOA. I think it looks great. I didn't have any additions to suggest. But you mentioned signage to point people to the areas that they need to go in order to interact with town staff inside the building. I think you may have already considered this, and it has nothing to do with the MOA, which is our agenda item, but from Taylor Road, there are 2 driveways. So are we going to be using one driveway to access municipal space and the other to access the school space, or are people going to be coming into the same driveway and parking area? And if it's too different or the same, I just think that there should be really clear signage to direct vehicles so you don't end up having people driving in and then having to come back around and drive into the other entrance.
That's a great point. In short, that driveway will be used by both, but what we'll be doing, the main driveway, that secondary driveway leading to the back of the building will not be utilized by town staff or residents, so we're going to be focusing all vehicular traffic to the front entrance. And thank you for that note. We are going to put signage out there, and that's something I wanted to point out. It's not just wayfinding inside the building, it's also around the building as well. So we'll work to have signage to clearly highlight and point out parking areas for visitors and staff as well. And one additional item, if I could, that I didn't mention that I wanted to make sure that I did tonight is where do we move these meetings, finance committee meetings, entities that are using this room so that we can have a larger crowd or have it videotaped by ActonTV. We've been able to utilize or able to negotiate usage of the cafetorium, which will now put all of us up on a stage and have seats. We can meet down on the floor if we want, no problem. But we'll be utilizing the cafetorium for these type of meetings. As part of the space usage, we're also identifying conference rooms so that we can still work to accommodate committees who would use room 9, 126, or a different space that's not necessarily here. And we're hopeful that we can have at least 2 conference rooms inside of this building that can be utilized by those committees.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned that because that would be my choice, the cafetorium. Any questions or comments from board members? Pam?
I'm just curious, will this accommodate all of the current staff who work here and departments that work out of this building?
Yes.
I think the MOU is great, the plan is great. I would prefer not to be on the stage. I think we can go to, I think it's important. Well, anyway, if it's a foot-high stage, I can get that, right? If it's a 3-foot-high stage, I'd rather be down. I don't see us looking down on people that come to talk to us.
I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the MOA between the town of Acton and the AB school, I don't have anything in front, district. Sorry.
Could I just offer, and to authorize the town manager to sign the agreement?
Oh, and to authorize the town manager to sign the agreement.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And you're up again for item number 9, approve the ASIF Parlin facility use and fee policy.
Yes, thank you. Up on the screen, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger, is a revised policy that incorporates comments that were provided at the last meeting in June, where we rolled the first draft out. Thank you for all your comments at the last meeting. Since then, we've received some additional comments. I've not had an opportunity to put them in here, but we could discuss those and incorporate those into this policy. Our hope is that if we're able to come to an agreement, or if the board's able to come to an agreement on a final policy tonight, that you would approve it. And if you would like another draft, we're happy to come back on the July 20th meeting for another proposal. But some of the things that were noted at the last meeting was to incorporate or include the interior usage capacity limitation at the top. And then some of the conversations that were had by the board at the last meeting about exterior capacity had some concerns on identifying a final number where, and one example was the library book sale, that if you place a specific capacity limitation on it, but you have people arriving throughout the day, you could exceed that total number. So we did not put an exterior capacity limit in this document, but that doesn't mean that one can't exist if the board so chooses. A couple other items that will change, the top bullet point, the reservations must be made via email to the facilities department using this email address. We are transitioning reservations for this space, I believe we discussed it previously, but haven't made this edit here, through an online system that we're currently reserving space inside the building for. And this bullet point will change to that. It'll say reservations must be made via website or to the facilities department via this website. So that's one edit that'll occur. And then one major change is outlining the use group classifications. This is modeled after the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District policy. After hearing feedback from the board and looking into this further, one idea that we pivoted towards was creating categories and then fitting people or fitting organizations and departments and groups into these categories for consideration. And that would tie into a fee structure below as well. And then liability insurance, which is included in the last one. It was just moved to the bottom of this policy. So I'm happy to answer any questions, go more in depth, and also take any feedback that you have as well.
Dean?
It all looks good. The question I've got is under some of the lower categories of users. I just want to make sure that the town is recovering the full cost of the use of the facility, especially if it's not a Town of Acton group. I want to make sure that either Category 2 or Category 3 pay their fair share. I know in the past, in other towns, I've heard horror stories about they set an unrealistically low fee, rental fee, and then they end up having to put town staff in there and end up basically tying up town staff and not sufficiently generate enough revenue to pay for them. So I just want to make sure that especially in Category 3, that there is more than adequate compensation to the taxpayers.
Thank you for that feedback. So one item that you'll see is it breaks out roughly to $50 per hour for a space until you get to Category 3, where it's $150 per hour for the building and the lawn, or $50 an hour for the lawn only. One item that's not included in that $150 or $50 is a custodial fee, which would be an additional $50 an hour. So if you were an outside entity in Category 3 utilizing the space for 3 hours, you would pay the $150 for the building usage and then $50 for the custodial fee per hour and the kitchenette use fee if you were to so use that space.
And is that $50 per hour calculated on the straight rate of the employee or an overtime rate?
That's estimated overtime rate.
Okay.
I'm waiting for you to call on me, Tom. I have a question. I didn't notice that the custodial fee was an hourly fee before, and I'm wondering if a group has
an event or a meeting function that's 5 hours long, but the custodial tasks are, setting up maybe chairs and tables before for an hour and then an hour of cleaning, why would we do 5 hours charge for that hourly fee?
That's a fair question. At that point, it becomes difficult to appropriately, or to schedule appropriate coverage for that period. If we're asking a staff member to come in for the first hour and then come back 4 hours later, it becomes a little difficult to do that because that would occur on essentially time outside of their normal working day.
Thank you. David?
Yes, I have a handful of things. I think the bullet point above where they talk about security deposit, that should be moved down with the fees. And I would like to see a little bit more guidance in this policy. I want to see it a little less arbitrary. For example, that the reasons that we would require a security deposit, for example, the size of the event or if food were being served or whatever criteria we want. But I don't want it to be arbitrary to say we're charging Group A for, a security deposit. We're not charging Group B a security deposit. So I think, and we just need some guidelines as to why we would have a security deposit or always do it, right? I think it just shouldn't be arbitrary. The second thing is, I think we want something in this policy about signage. I'm sure the town manager copied you this morning. I sent a note to the town manager this morning. I'm okay that if someone puts a sign in the lawn that says Acton Environmental Group event here, that's okay. If they want to put in a sign that says oppose Hanscom expansion, I don't think that should go on town property, right? And so I think we need a policy that says, you can put some group identification or whatever wording you want to do, but no advocacy signs associated with the event. I think this should definitely call it the Asaph Parlin House and not 17 Woodbury. There were people who complained that we didn't know whether it was Asa or Asaph in the beginning, and they said we should call it something else. And so we started using 17 Woodbury. But now I think we should call it the Asaph Parlin House. That's just, I think it honors the heritage of the house. And, this historical commission has, did its research to say it was Asaph Parlin that was there the most, so I'm happy to go with that. I don't know what the other board members think. The policy says that there's priority for town events. That makes sense, right? So, but I'm wondering how that works in practice. If sometime during the reconstruction of Town Hall, we have someone has the thing reserved on a Monday night, is a select board meeting going to kick them out? Maybe they've reserved it 3 months ago, and they were planning to have this event on, Monday night, October 15th or something. I think it can't be just 100% priority for events. Maybe we can block out when we think, but I don't think we should kick people who've made long-term reservations, and especially put down a dollar amount, right? So, or even if they didn't, but if it's a local group or club or whatever, and we're just letting them use the facility for free because they don't have food and whatever, they're just meeting there, I think that's fine, but I just want to understand that this policy needs to be more explicit as to what priority means. And finally, I'm wondering if we want to have a bathrooms-only usage policy, right? So maybe in the automated system, Tom, someone can say, we're having an event at the Goward Playground. Can I have the bathrooms open between 2 and 5 next Sunday or whatever? And whatever charge, I don't know whether it involves a charge, but it should be on this policy to allow them neither to reserve the building nor the lawn, Or maybe it's a lawn-only event, I don't know. If it's a lawn-only event and that includes the bathrooms, I'm good with that. But this doesn't, I didn't notice the word bathrooms, I looked for it. I didn't search for it. But anyway, it should be explicit how someone can get to bathrooms. Maybe if they're having that Gower playground thing and they just do a lawn-only event, they get the bathrooms. Anyway, that's my final, actually, that's my final comment to the policy. There's two other things that I think should be really upfront for people actually making the reservation. One is, and whether it's on the reservation form or part of the policy, I don't really care, as long as it's really upfront. What's the trash policy? I mean, when they reserve the room, do we provide 2 big buckets and they can fill those? Anything more they have to take home? Or what? You know, it just should say. I think we should say whatever policy we want, but it should be explicit. And I don't care if we put out a lawn capacity. I'm fine with that being limited by the size of the parking lot. I think that's going to effectively limit it anyway. Or we could put guidance that, that says the lawn really can't handle more than 75 people or whatever number we think. But I think really up front should be the interior fire department capacity of the building. So it should say interior capacity 35 people or whatever the number is, not to exceed ever 35 people, so that we don't violate the fire code. Thanks, that's all my stuff. Sorry for being long-winded. And I can send you that in writing if you'd like.
Do you have any response? I wanted to point out that trash is, you've scrolled past it now, but it's closer to there it is. All trash to be placed in waste baskets. Any items left behind will be considered trash. When we rent out other facilities like the rec center or Narra Park Picnic Pavilion, do we have a trash carry-out policy, or do we provide trash removal expecting people to put it into a container?
Great question. Looking at Narra Pavilion, we have park stewards who are assigned to those events. So, and that's unique, right? So we staff Narra so that we focus the operations to best accommodate whatever's happening there, whether it's events in the evening. But we typically will have the staff assigned when we have park stewards to be able to clean up after whoever is there. Some of the items that were brought up are great things that we need to consider. One thing with the exterior bathroom rental possibility are some security concerns. When it's outside of operating hours, we don't have a staff member who's available to go back over to the bathroom at the end of the evening and make sure that it's completely empty before it gets locked up for the night. And one concern that we've been trying to navigate through is what if and we do have the ability to schedule the doors to be unlocked on the swipes. What, in the event that something occurs in that space and it's locked and nobody's been able to check that until Monday when it's occurred on the Sunday. So it's some of the stuff that we're looking at and trying to navigate. And that if that's something that's needed for a large event that's utilizing the lawn or an event that's using Gower Playground, then I think one of the things we would ask for is for overtime to be put on for a custodian or a facilities staff member to be able to go by and lock up that facility at the evening for security purposes. From a trash standpoint, one of the notes you had mentioned, David, was exterior trash receptacles and recycling. And we do have, we've had some conversations about putting those out there and just maintaining those like we would a normal exterior space like a playground or a park, and that's part of it. I think the trickier thing is when we get into larger events that are generating a lot of waste or having a large footprint and a large need, that would trigger the need to have facilities staff members on through the custodial fee to be able to support that event. But those notes that you provided are definitely appreciated, and we can incorporate that into another draft policy.
David.
So thank you for that, Tom. I just wanted to say with the trash, I just think we need to be upfront with the expectation. I'm fine with whatever you guys decide, but if the expectation is they don't leave any trash, We should say that when they apply for the space, right? Or if the expectation is that they get 2 barrels, anything more than that, they have to take away. Whatever the expectation is, it should just say, because otherwise, we're going to get, I think, trash strewn around. And the bathrooms, I'm actually okay also with what you said. I don't know how the other board members feel, but I'm fine that it have to be a lawn-only event for the bathrooms, if that's what makes sense. But I do think that the library should be able to use the bathrooms. So let's suppose we have Holy, right, a library event, or Juneteenth, which the library participated in. The library should be able to tell facilities or do themselves that, we're having Holy for 2 hours on such and such a day. The outdoor bathrooms will be available. There are, I said Gower Playground, but there are really things behind the library that happen, and the library should be able to incorporate the bathrooms into its events, I think.
So it sounds like we're going to bring back another draft for the July 20th meeting. And maybe we could also clarify for category 1, these are, town boards and committees. So, let's say if the finance committee wants to meet in the Asaph Parlin House, are we going to charge them for AV setup, custodial fee, actual costs? I just feel like that category 1, we shouldn't be charging anything for trash removal, because there might be something that's tossed into a wastebasket, like I might, toss a can into the trash can here before I leave room 204. Same for a town board or committee meeting. I don't think that we should be charging a fee, but if somebody is paying a rental fee, then a trash fee makes sense. Or a bathroom fee if we have to cover the cost of somebody coming back and checking to make sure that it's empty before it gets locked.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
One line underneath the custodial kitchen and AV fees, the first bullet, category 1 users may opt to cover the custodial and AV setup in lieu of fee. So one idea would be either to have town staff go down and set up a screen and a hookup for finance committee to be able to plug their laptop in. And that's a service that's done by town staff during town staff time. I believe that the intent of this is any fee that's outside of normal operational needs.
Okay.
If finance committee were to meet in this space, IT would meet typically with anybody who needed assistance to walk them through the system, which has occurred, and not to pick on the finance committee, so use a different one, Acton 250, DPW building committee. So any committee that needs some support from IT, they typically provide that. I believe that the intent that we're looking at the fee schedule is anything above and beyond normal expectations. So if there was a committee and they were going to have an evening meeting at 7 p.m. and require IT assistance throughout the entire night, that carries a cost that we would have to incorporate. And we can better outline that too, that it would be any fee associated with these categories, or category 1 that's outside of normal expectations and operating hours, if that helps.
Yeah, I think I'm just getting tripped up by what's in the table. Like there's, yes, a fee or actual cost that tells me I'm going to be paying. All right, thank you for outlining this and taking even more feedback. Who knew it was going to be this complicated? But at least it's not 7 pages, like the school district's fee. We are ready to move on to consent items. Item 10, approve meeting minutes for January 27, 2025, June 15 and 18, 2026. Item 11, approve executive session minutes from June 26, 2026. Item 12, approve disposition of surplus property. Item 13, approve Acton committee questionnaire and distribution to volunteers.
Item 14, accept donation of $1,653.50 from McKinnon Printing Company towards shared profit of Acton 250 marketing sales to be deposited in the Acton 250 gift account. Item 15, approve reappointment of members of Land Stewardship Committee with terms to end on June 30th, 2029. Bill Smith, Associate Member, Todd Securis, Associate Member, Ken Apple, Associate Member. Item 16, appoint Annie Channon as a full member of the Cemetery Commission with a term to end June 30th, 2029. Item 17, accept donations towards the 2026 Summer Concert Series and Special Events, Stamsky and McNary, Inc. for $1,000, Acton Pharmacy for $500, Kitchen Outfitters for $500, Squash West for $500, Prime Painting for $200. Item 18, approve one-day malt and wine licenses, Neshoba Valley Neighbors Club on July 12, 2026 at Nara Park Bathhouse Pavilion. Anirban Mondal on July 26, 2026 at Nara Park Picnic Pavilion from 12:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. And Priyesh Kuriyat on July 26, 2026 at Nara Park Picnic Pavilion from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Move to approve consent items 10 through 18 inclusive.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any extensions? Exemptions? It's extensions? Expectations? It is 10 o'clock and I cannot talk. Sorry. No, that's okay. No. No, but I think people then rained in on the Stow Street.
Even think of timing. When you said that, I was like,
And also, I'm sorry. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Thank you, Tom. Are you leaving to go to a conference or on vacation? I'm on vacation. Yay! Have a great vacation.